United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have just returned from closed session where we discussed conference with labor negotiator regarding NTA, conference with labor negotiator regarding non-represented employees, and conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated and existing litigation. No action was taken. I would call for approval of the agenda.
I so move.
Moved by Member Crocker, second by Member Preciado. Please vote. Four ayes, thank you. Member Rodriguez is not here this evening. He's not feeling well. Next, we move to the school spotlight for John F. Kennedy Elementary. And would you like to introduce us?
Yes, thank you. This evening, Ms. Pam Hughes, principal of Kennedy Elementary, will share some of the fantastic work that staff and our principal is doing. Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me come and talk about Kennedy, one of my very favorite subjects. We have a wonderful school. We are the Kennedy Eagles. Here's our mascot. You can look at the board in the back while you're waiting. We've got lots of display. All right. So I am the principal of Kennedy. This is my 5th year there, which is surprising to me. Time flies. Right? It seems like yesterday that I moved over there, and here I am finishing halfway through year 5. Let's not jump ahead. We're going to start by looking at our snapshot of our dashboard, just like everybody else, I'm sure. We are in the green for our suspension rate and our English learner progress. We are concerned that we declined in the English language arts and math. Both moved from green to yellow during the last test taken in the spring. And so our teachers are working really hard on making sure that that decline turns into a gain. So some of the things that we're working on at Kennedy throughout this year, and we started it last year, really trying to focus on individual students. For the most part, our kids do well at Kennedy. They come in doing well, and they leave us doing well. And so what we do find is that we have a handful of kids that need some extra attention and extra support. So teachers are doing that in the classroom, and they're also doing that after school, working with small groups of students who need an extra boost. This year we've had Soul Shop come in and do anti-bullying assemblies. Soul Shop is well known. Many of the schools in Newark use them. They will have come 3 times this year. They do an assembly for each grade level group in the morning, and then in the afternoon they go into the individual classrooms and work with kids around issues that the class is having. So we've been very happy to be able to have them this year. That happens through the generosity of our PTA, who funds that assembly program for us. This year, as in every year, we're doing a whole school art project. This year it's rocks, so everybody in the student is painting a rock, and they'll be displayed in the front of the school. We have a really wonderful parent-led art program at Kennedy, and so our art liaison parents have set this program up, and there's a children's book that has pictures of rocks all decorated. So they've been going in and reading the story, and then we're working on that to put it all together. We want to do projects with the whole school, but it's often cost prohibitive. So they have gotten rocks donated, and paint is paid for through the proceeds from our art auction. So we're excited. We're hoping that over spring break we will have all of the rocks painted and put together so that when the kids come back from spring break, that art project will be there for them. This is our first year of implementation of PBIS. So we're having things like Lego lunch and Winter Wonderland lunch. So kids earn tickets, and if they want to spend their tickets on activities, they can. The Lego lunch was a huge success, and we had kids, and they were very happy to play with Legos during their lunchtime. So it didn't take away from class time, and it was something that they worked for and earned, and they're very excited about it. So our leadership team and our 6th graders have been doing a lot of on-campus community service this year. So for example, we have some kids that are spending part of their recess time with our special day class, our younger special day class. They're also going into 1st grade classrooms and working with the kids on sight words. Sometimes they just need somebody to hold the card up and do repetition. And so our students are seeing that as a great opportunity for them to provide kind of support and kind of paying it forward to the kids who are coming through the school after them. We also have lunchtime chess a couple days a week for our upper grade kids. That's run by a couple of teachers who just wanted kids to have an opportunity to play chess. And then our STEAM letter is E, as engineering. And so our upper grades are rotating. They're putting together a system where they rotate through different engineering projects with the kids. So that's very exciting. As always, Kennedy has a strong community. We have things like Mercury Club, which is our running club. We have parents and younger siblings, and we all go out after school and run around the field. Our art auction is coming up. It's April 20th. I just wanted to make sure you knew that April 20th was a really fun activity, April 20th at Kennedy School, where we have
what is that date?
April 20th, where we have an art auction, and it is an art gallery, and it's a wonderful evening. Our parents put together some project that includes all of the schools, all of the classes, and then we auction that off. That's always a hot auction item. Each student produces at least one piece of artwork, and we put them up. They get displayed in the cafeteria, and people purchase them. And sometimes kids get there later with their parents, and their art has already been purchased, and they're very disappointed, but that's how an art gallery works. We sell your artwork. So that is a really fun event, and I would be happy to give you more information as it gets closer, but it's become an annual event that's very, very popular with our families and our teachers who also attend. All right, that's Kennedy School. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Would you introduce the staff that's
Yeah,
here?
I'm so excited. I was ill and not at school today, so I didn't put out a push, and here come some teachers that just happened to show up. So thank you very much to Babette Babbage and Diane Munson. Wonderful teachers. And we have a Kennedy parent, Carrie, back there.
There you go. Oh, good. All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone, any comments from board?
What was the date of the art auction?
Oh, that would be April 20th.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to the superintendent's update, and we have someone that would like to speak to this item. Ms. Parks?
Clarification, or when you have a presentation, don't you normally do the presentation first before, I just am a little confused because the public needs to see what's going to be presented, and I'm not saying that I can't ask my question for this item, but just as a rule, it seems like it's back and forth. Sometimes the presentations happen first and then the public gets to speak, and other times it's like this and the public doesn't get to perhaps ask the questions that are generated by seeing the presentation.
I think some are logically, we want you to speak first, and then some logically we would,
Well, what would be those what would be those logical parameters.
I think this would be a good thing for the board to talk about in terms of how we conduct our meetings going forward. Would you prefer to speak after?
I can ask mine now, and perhaps they could address it later. But it just to have for the consistency, so the public knows what to expect, please.
It's a point well taken. Thank you.
My concern is that when I first looked at the Facilitron document that was prepared, the presentation, was that it only dealt with their information. And I think in order for you to properly evaluate the program, it would be very helpful to have at least a 3-year history, so you know what you're comparing it to. You're looking at what they've said that they've done, and that's all well and good, but you don't know what the district was doing on its own. Are these truly increased financial numbers compared to what the district was doing on its own? And without that to compare it to, you're not seeing the full picture. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Superintendent.
Thank you. And I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the board, that we will answer most of that in our process. Before I introduce the presenters tonight, I do want to say that we're still not there yet. We're still in implementation, so we haven't gone to implementation fully with Facilitron the way we want to, but we're building those pieces as we go forward. But I'm going to ask our presenters to step forward. Adalyn Lee, Hal Liu, and Greg Payne, if you guys want to step up, and we'll cue your PowerPoint, and then we'll have a chance for the board members to ask after your brief presentation. Welcome.
Okay. In fall of 2017, we entered a partnership with New York Unified School District. What we did was we went around to all the school sites, took photos using drones.
Oh, excuse me. Could you use the microphone because we're being televised?
So in September 2017, we entered a partnership with New York Unified School District. What we did was we went around to all the school sites and took photos using drones and 360 cameras. We created custom websites for all the school sites, including the district. We went and configured all the accounts to the current board policy rates, including services, things like that. And we also went around and trained the school staff and district staff. So to date, since September 2017, New York has received approximately $150,000 in bookings received. And of that, it was $100,000 in approved bookings. And this is all potential revenue, to be clear. The rental revenue to date that the district has received is about $9,000, just over $9,000. So in perspective, you have $100,000 in approved bookings. So that is revenue, incoming revenue. Since the inception, we have begun collecting data on behalf of the district in terms of utilization. It's broken down here on the graph by facility type, and the most used facilities is the fields, which takes up over 50% of the usage. The renters within your district with the most usage is the top one being New York American Little League, New York Girls Softball League, St. Edward's CYO, and Stage 1 Theater. Those are the top renters so far. The next step in the process is we've actually begun, and this is the early stages right now, is a cost analysis for the district. We take into account your buildings, the square footage, any maintenance costs, utilities, things like that, and we present what it actually costs for you to maintain these facilities. And that is just the early stages right now, so that's it.
And it's important to note from what we understand that it's been since 2009, I think, since the last fee increase. But so right now we're gathering data, processing requests, helping the district monitor and manage the usage. With that data, becomes insight, right? To be able to make decisions based on the data that we have. And currently, I'm not sure we've had good records of what has happened historically that I'm aware of, but obviously the district has more of that information.
Thank you. Ms. Crocker? I think what Ms. Parks asked is something that I wrote down to ask you too, and that is how much savings have we, how much have we increased our income by the use of it? And so that means looking at the data before, what we were getting for rentals, and then what we're getting now. So you say you're not ready to do that yet? Or you don't have the information in the past?
We just don't have a baseline to go off of at this point. We're only tracking what's being requested at this point.
Okay.
But that's data that we would have to gather internally based on past year's revenue from facilities.
Is that possible to get that data to them so they can give us an ongoing timeline?
Right.
Mr.
Yes.
Richards?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to parse out some data. We'll have to parse out a little bit of data because the same account code that handles these types of facility uses also handles like our tower leases and the Cadango and some of the other ones that are long-term. So we'll pull some data out and send it over to them, and I'll send an update to the board in the Friday update.
Is that a 3-year trend, just to be clear? Is that how much do you want to look at?
Yeah. That's
3 year, last 3 years.
Yeah, that would do. That would do, yeah.
Because, I mean, the fundamental question that I think the whole entire room is asking is, with this approved amount of $105,000, how does that compare at the same timeline from the previous 3 years? Has it increased, decreased? Where do we stand on that?
Okay.
And I think it's important to note the whole basis of our partnership is to help school districts manage how their facilities are being used, centrally communicating with usage. But our whole basis is based on cost recovery. So helping the district understand what it actually costs when a group uses the facility, and an easy way and a mechanism to recover some of those costs. I'm not sure if in prior years if that has been something that's been readily available or not, but that's where we come in and have helped the district kind of understand some of that data.
Maybe perhaps we can have that instead of in a Friday update, we can have it as a brief staff report so the public, per Ms. Parks' question, will also be able to see that information. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Another question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Come back, please. Mr. Preciado.
So it says you begun the cost analysis. Do you know, in terms of time frame, when you would have that completed, just so that if we can check in maybe by the end of the year so we can figure out, like, one of the things that we've just historically have done with other things, we don't increase our rates and we actually usually take a loss or we have historically for other things. So just making sure that we're breaking even for the things with the internal stuff, and then if there's any gains that we account for that through rate increases. So do you have a kind of rough timeline of when that cost analysis?
Assuming that we have all pieces of data in order to conduct that price analysis, I would say probably less than a couple weeks to really put it together and present it to you. But that is under the assumption that we have all the data.
Perfect. So then maybe as a good basis would be at the end of the year, and then we have something in the summer where we kind of look at it, just because that way you can track the whole year one with Facilitron and figure out.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everything is controlled by the district. Who gets charged, what they get charged, what the policies are. We're just a mechanism to help implement that. So important.
I had a question on the, if you could go, well, never mind. But there was a section where the application was not approved. What was the issues there?
Most commonly, it's usually because we don't have internal schedules or class schedules completely inputted. And so it's actually already in use by the school, and therefore it had to be declined just because it's already in use by the school. And so the school site cannot accommodate that request.
So is it possible to get those schedules to you so that people don't get frustrated when they try to sign up for something and it's not available?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been working a lot with Susan to get those schedules in, and definitely do our best. But obviously sometimes we're human, we can forget. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy? Just to make it clear, we are not charging school groups during the school day. So anything that's related to the school, and there's a limited amount that we're charging for nonprofits versus someone that's not a nonprofit. So there's various steps that are there in terms of charges.
Correct.
So it seemed to me very reasonable. But it would be nice to know what the total true cost is of that facility use during that time.
Sure.
So that
in
would
the
get-
cost analysis or the price analysis, we do break it down by whether recommended fees for a nonprofit versus a commercial group.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That concludes my report at this time.
Thank you. Next, we move on to staff reports, elementary language arts and math data presentation. Oh, excuse me. Yes, you do.
His request is on 10.1.
Yours is on 10.1. This is not a non-agenda item.
Superintendent update. No.
Well, Mr. Henneberry, it says 10.1.
Just leave it there.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening. This evening, Ms. Amy Black will be presenting some of our data that we have in regards to our elementary English language arts program and our mathematics. As we start to map out our board presentations and also collecting our data baselines, we think it's an important opportunity to really share some of our local data and share some of the data sets that our teachers are using to make real-time decisions in regards to teaching and learning.
Thank you. Good evening, President Thomas, members of the board, Superintendent Sanchez, Executive Cabinet. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you this evening about some of our student local data. I know I've been here in the past and shared some of our state data and how our students are doing, but I think it's also important for you to get a snapshot of the data that we continue to collect throughout the year in relation to our LCAP goals, as well as some of the programs that we have implemented. I think it's important for you to also know that you are my fourth presentation of this information. I've had the opportunity to present at 2 LCAP advisory meetings, so parents have had an opportunity to look at this data and start to unpack it themselves and helping them with goals moving forward, as well as reviewed it with our district leadership team. So save the best for last here to share with the school board this evening. I think it's really important to start with a quote and get us framed around the thinking around data. So it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data, said Sherlock Holmes. So I think that's important because I think that captures Ed Services' view in terms of teaching and learning, and that any decision that we make relative to student learning or programs, we must analyze the data and see how our students are doing before we make a decision. So how is data collected? So I know that we have a lot of acronyms that we throw around, or a lot of programs as a school board member, or a member of the public or community or parents. Sometimes it could be very overwhelming. It's also sometimes overwhelming for our teachers. So I wanted to talk about some of the buzzwords that we've been talking about this year. So local data is collected through, basically think of it as a big file cabinet that lives in the cloud. So we are using Illuminate. It replaced a prior system that Newark used. It was ORS, but Illuminate came in and purchased ORS, so now we're using Illuminate. So we were fortunate enough to transfer some of our ORS data from last year, and I was able to capture that, and I'll share that with you this evening. It's now inputted into Illuminate. I did share some Illuminate reports with you at the beginning of the school year when we were looking at SBAC data, but this is a way that we collect state data, as well as our iReady data is uploaded in there, and benchmark data that teachers collect, like at the elementary level, we use the DRA, which stands for Developmental Reading Assessment. Teachers collect it 3 times a year, and they upload it into Illuminate. So it allows us to gather data, do subgroup reports, and measure how students are doing individually, as well as in their classrooms and then throughout their schools, and ultimately the district. iReady is something that's named in our LCAP. We are in the second year. I'll talk a little bit more about it. We're going to actually look at some of the data tonight. We're capturing what's called progress monitoring or benchmark data for our students in kindergarten through 8th grade in both reading and in mathematics. This is really exciting because it gives us another tool to be able to see how our students are doing. And this specific benchmark is aligned to state standards. So it'll give us real-time data. Of course, it's one measure. We have to look at multiple data sources of our students, but it gives us real-time data in terms of their trajectory to making standard by the end of the year. Most of the data that I'm talking about today, and I wanted to mention this, we collect formative versus summative data. And the data we're going to be reviewing actually in a lot of cases is both. So formative is what informs our instruction. It tells us what our students still need to learn, where we need to take them to meet standards at the end of the year. Summative, typically we think of summative as our state test. It tells us how did they learn. So it kind of encompasses everything that we taught in that particular unit. So local data and summative data is collected in Illuminate and iReady, and then state data, SBAC is collected in what's called TOMS, and that's our spring assessment, our California alternative assessment for our special ed students. New this year for our high school students will be the California science test in its final pilot phase. And then we shift from CAS testing to LCAP. I'm not going to review any of the state testing today. We're just going to focus on local. So looking at ELA local data, I'm going to highlight iReady scores and our Lucy Calkins, which is our writing program that we've adopted. It's also identified in the LCAP under Goal 1, Action Item 2, supporting Action Items 3 and 4. Things to notice, we're going to look at the iReady data first. We're in our second year of collecting. PM stands for Progress Monitoring, our progress monitoring data in iReady. It's also important to note, and I'll point out the student numbers, that iReady data collection is new for grades kindergarten, 1st, 7th, and 8th grade this year. So we'll see a snapshot of pre and post data from last year, and then how our students fared at the beginning of this year. Also keep in mind, we're fast approaching trimester 2, and teachers are frantically collecting data sources and having students go into iReady so that we'll have another marker in terms of how students are progressing this year in both reading and math. Okay, so I know it's hard to see. I don't know if I can magnify it at all, but I wanted to show, so this assessment is pre and post data in iReady for last year. Can I go over here so you guys can see? So you'll see the assessment 1 was taken in October, and then at the end of the year of last year, so 16-17 data. The light blue is their pre-assessment or their assessment number 1 at the beginning of the year. This is not a good one to look at because there's only 13 students. So I would pay attention to these larger numbers to kind of get a larger data set. And then the dark blue line shows the growth by the end of the year. I mean, obviously we're looking at trying to get on level, and we have some gaps in our progress areas. But what this tells us is that students are making progress. We can tweeze down the data more on individual sites as well as grade level, and then individual teachers have access to their class, and they can do student reports on how individual students are faring. And then this iReady program also targets next steps in terms of what a teacher should then teach in terms of strategies that is appropriate for that student, meeting them where they are. So it gives teachers some really valuable information about their individual students.
Can we ask questions as you go?
Sure,
Do you prefer at the very end? Because I figure you're still on this slide. So just to kind of understand the data here. At the end of last year, 34% of our 4th graders were on grade level, and 28% of 5th graders and 35% of 6th graders. Is that how I'm reading this data?
That is correct.
Okay.
Let me talk a little bit about the standards and why we're seeing that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to also, when you're looking at this data, thinking about Common Core and when it was really officially implemented here in Newark. I would say, I believe it's our 3rd grade group. I can't remember if it's our 3rd or 4th grade group was our first year that they were exposed to Common Core. So you're going to see students in the higher grade, they had a complete shift in their standards, and what we know about Common Core is a much more rigorous program. It is also a program where there's new adoptions taking place or transitions of materials, and so the standards that they're being assessed on are very different. So some of the foundational skills that our students in the younger grades that are getting, starting from Common Core in the beginning, moving up, we're hoping to see a pattern of them, and you'll see that in the writing. Their scores are going to be stronger. Also with the implementation of Readers and Writers Workshop, which is a very rigorous intensive Common Core program, and I'll talk a little bit about the implementation of that. Some of the kits, like in 6th grade for reading and writing, they just received a kit, and it's challenging for them in terms of the standards.
So then our and I'm not going up to K, kindergarten, 1st grade, because there's not enough data there, right? But 2nd and 3rd grade shows much higher number. So you're saying that's because during the 2nd and 3rd grade, the kids aren't using Common Core, and that's
no, they are. So they've been exposed since kindergarten. So our current 2nd and 3rd graders have been using, so teachers have been teaching those standards since they were in kindergarten. So in terms of that shift of looking at DOK levels, the types of questioning, the foundational skills, moving away from a Harcourt brace like box basal reader to actually meeting students where they are developmentally, and then increasing their reading and writing through specific strategies that we do in Reading Writing Project. We should hopefully see a trend of students in the younger grades faring better than our upper grades. Doesn't mean that we're not paying attention to their upper grades, but just gives you a little bit of a lens as to why we see that disparity in some of this data.
It just seems like a huge cliff, right? From 60% to 34% between the 3rd and 4th grade. I know when Common Core was implemented, it was ramped. It wasn't, okay, let's put a halt and then switch over. So I'm just trying to understand the huge discrepancy between 3rd and 4th grade overall. So thank you.
Yeah, and something that we look at as well is in 3rd grade. Typically that is a grade level that we take a closer look at. This one, actually they're scoring better, but in our writing it looks a little bit different. In our primary grades, K to 2, we're teaching, it's like learning to read, right? And then you shift in 3rd, 4th, 5th, reading to learn, and the content standards significantly increase. And so students that were on the cusp of their reading ability and hadn't really worked on the strategies of inferencing and some of the deeper level thinking and reading, you're going to see them really struggle, and they get in the upper grades.
But the test is an intuitive test, right? It scales to understand that, what you mentioned at the 2nd and 3rd grade, it's learning to read and whatnot. The makers of the test program that. So I'm having a hard time understanding why that would cause it, because the test tests for that.
Oh, it's adaptive.
Well, yeah, it's adaptive. Thank you. But what I'm saying is the questions in the test are crafted around the notion in the 2nd and 3rd grade that the students are still learning to read. It's not that they're not taking, or at least from what I think, they're not taking 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade standards and then expecting the 2nd and 3rd grade students to, right, to test to those standards. The 2nd and 3rd grades students are being tested upon what they are expected to have been able to learn at that level, right? Therefore, right, it's at grade level. So it's not, so it's again, I think it goes back to my earlier comment. I believe you weren't here, but as far as the reporting, just a deep dive, and this is a great start as far as being able to, have us understand and see what's going on with this. But just dig really deep, like what is really happening in between 3rd and 4th? What accounts for that significant drop-off in terms of our students being at grade level?
Okay.
And Amy, my understanding is that this is comparing to the state average, right? This data
is a nationally normed test.
Right, so it's nationally normed, which means that we're comparing them to everyone else.
Yeah,
and
in
that's
their grade band and age band, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure it's explicit. Thank you.
So the second iReady test is our current cohort of students, and this assessment marks or measures where they were at the beginning of the year. So it's not measuring where they should be at the end of the year. It's kind of are they on target for making growth for this year? So you'll see, kindergarten through 8th grade, a similar pattern. We have strong right out the gate in our upper grades, and then our lower grades and our upper grades needing some additional support in reading. So we'll get our second assessment coming up in this month. So it'll be interesting to be able to compare that data, and I'm happy to share that with you to make sure our students are still on target.
Sorry, Ms. Black. Why did they change the metric? Because I'm scrolling between the first one, and the 3 levels are below level, including emerging, and then on level, then above level. But when we get to this current slide, it switches. It goes below level, and then the on level, and then includes emerging is on that same column.
Yeah, it's not a same report. So if you look at define on level, it's beginning of the year view. So we're looking at a different cross section of the data. So it's not looking at, where they are at standard at the end of the year. So it's based on benchmarking that this system does. So
do we have the ability to pull that report in a consistent manner, or is that the system?
So once I have comparable data, I will be able to do that. But at that point in time, I only had one measure. And so with this upcoming reporting, I'll be able to do a comparative report like the one that you just saw. So I can see assessment 1 and assessment 2, and it'll look similar to the one that we
no, I'm sorry, that's not what I was referring to. So if you look at that chart on the very left column where it says the student placement distribution, it has below level, including emerging, in that column, right? In the first column. Then if you can scroll up, please, to this one, then it has including emerging in the second column.
Right, because we're not doing end of the year data. So this has an end of the year data pool. So like that dark blue is telling us
causes the column to shift in
because
metric?
I'm comparing 2 different reports. So it's the beginning of the year, which would be pulling this kind of data when you're looking at this report. And then by the end of the year, which is that top band, you're either at standard or you're not. So they're going to have a below level, including emerging, in the second. So they're meshing 2 different reports because they're looking at 2 different data sets.
So if I were to look at this at a very skeptical level, right? I'm not saying that we are doing this or you are doing this, but if the program were doing this, I'd say they're gaming some data here by combining those 2 metrics in a different column than in the previous slide.
Yeah, but we're also, if you look at it, the lens, we're not looking at pre and post, how did our kids do by the end of the year? We're looking at are they on target to make measured growth? And so we would include, and we do that in our report cards as well, we do include emerging data because we want to see, are kids making growth? Are they not quite at standard? Well, there's definitely a point in the year that we start to worry or we see a decline. But if we're seeing kids continually take, even if they're not, is our gap closing? So there is usually more flexibility at the beginning and then second trimester for us to look at. We are looking at emerging data as long as that particular student is also making growth. It's hard when you're just looking at one subset of data. So I think it's going to be probably more for us to kind of grab a hold onto once you get that second assessment to look at it.
Point of information. What is emerging data? You're talking about the emerging. What is that?
Emerging onto grade level. So there's bands that they use. Like below grade level, you would score in this band and you would have that.
So it's range.
And then it's
range within that column.
And kids in this data set would be emerging. And then of course there's a variance on emerging.
Mr. Puzia, I'm sorry.
To Member Wynn's point, I think this is why we need to really dive into a strategic comparative 1 and actually map it out, because no matter how you slice the data, it's still not where we should be at and where we need. So I guess what I would say is at the end of this, we have to figure out what's the big picture plan to address the systemic underperformance at the district and what's working, what's not, and this is kind of a starting point. The question that I had was in terms of maybe because of ORS, Illuminate, and iReady. So Illuminate is now ORS, but does Illuminate, will that be replacing iReady?
No, they're totally separate programs, and they do different things.
Okay, because last conversation, or maybe it was at the last work study, it said that we were going to not use iReady anymore. So is this changed again? Because I'm confused.
And I'm sorry for that confusion. I think what we said was we are now only in our second year of implementation of iReady and the actual lessons that are tied to iReady. And so at the elementary level, we have them for grades 3rd through, I believe it's starting at 3rd grade. So we're going to continue with that. But what we have to look at, back to your point, is what is the growth that we're looking at, right? And then we do have some recommendations for today, so we'll start to talk about that.
Perfect.
So, and I apologize for the confusion the last time.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Because just to, I'll say the point again, but just so that if in the classroom as a teacher, if we keep on changing different programs, then it's like there's not buy-in, or it's going to be limited when it's I ready or you ready or we ready, or if we keep on changing it, and then we'll never be ready if we don't actually stick with one and kind of move forward. So thank you.
And just to kind of help move the conversation forward, I think these instruments are really more on the reporting side, but the next question is, in an area that something's working, like the area where I saw 100% kids are on grade level, what are we doing that's working? How do we maintain that? And then for the kids that are below grade level, if we look at like 4th grade below grade level, that 28%, what are we doing to target that group of kids? What's the program we're implementing? But I think she can answer some of these questions going in the next slides as I kind of look forward. So let's give her a chance to share a few more slides. I think she might answer some of these before they can become questions.
Okay, so y'all remember, I think you were all on the board when you voted in Readers and Writers Workshop. Is it I think spring 2016? Does that sound familiar? Some of you, most of you. So for kindergarten through 6th grade, our ELA program is Lucy Calkins Units of Study. They're Common Core aligned. They're very rigorous, and they require an element of ongoing coaching and professional development. So something that I noticed when I started in April, it's been almost a year, it's flown by, was that there was a little bit of an uneven implementation with our writers workshop. So we've had schools that have really kind of taken it on and done a lot of professional development, took advantage of the opportunities that were offered through Newark, which was really fantastic, having coaches available for teachers and supporting their work in Readers and Writers Workshop. Schools that have jumped on board, we have teachers. This last summer, I had teachers come from all different schools, hungry to learn more about Writers Workshop, as well as we had an opportunity to bring in West Coast Literacy this year and do coaching with 2 of our lowest performing schools and Title I schools, Schilling and Graham. Also, something that we were able to implement in August, and I have discussed this before, is being able to try to level the playing field with our teachers and provide all teachers with Writers Workshop intro, or teachers that were advanced actually had an opportunity to teach sessions at our August Professional Development Day. So really putting forth our commitment and also supporting teachers in their really great work. So I had the opportunity to be at Graham today for their 2nd cycle. They're in cycle 2 with their coach, and they're front loading our next genre, which is opinion. And I'm really excited to show, I'll go through a little bit of the data and explain this, show some of the data of their narrative writing when they worked with the coach at the beginning of this year. And we see some really positive movement. So really excited about moving forward and really making a commitment and adding support for our teachers with this really important work. So with the Writers Workshop, it focuses on the 3 common core genres, which are narrative writing, informational writing, and opinion or persuasive writing when you get to the upper grades. At the secondary level, it looks like argumentative writing. So I wanted to give you a little bit of snapshot. It's hard to capture this data in a way that's like really simple to read. So what I did is I collected pre and post data from 16-17 in all 3 genres. This is what teachers K through 6 are required to upload in Illuminate 3 times a year. So they collect pre-writing on-demand writing prompt. It's the same, and they use Lucy Calkins' rubric in order to score students and get data. So the green, which is super hard to see on this, it was easy to see on my computer, so I apologize. Now that it's projected, it's really hard to see. But the green bottom line is the pre, and then the darker blue on top is the post data. And then I put a green box around the rubric score. So 2.5 is almost like near standard, 3 is standard on the report card, 3.5 is a little bit above standard, and then 4 is above standard. We go in that gray area of 2 approaching standard, but it's still really important data, because if you're looking at, like, for example, our writing scores, pre-data, we had significant, almost 150 students scoring at a 1, right? And then if you look at their post-data, we want to see those blue lines increase as they go up the graph, and we are seeing that. Are they all at standard? No, but it's very promising to see our 0 and our 1 decrease, our 2s increase, and actually seeing students score 3.5 or 4. They weren't even on the chart in their pre-assessment. So I think that's really promising. So that's data that I've captured also in the informational and opinion. You can spend a lot of time analyzing this. We don't have a lot of time, but you have it available online, and I'm happy to answer questions if you look at the data in the future and want to understand how it was captured. So it's captured 1st through 6th grade, so you'll see varying degrees of shifting, but overall I would say across all the grade levels we are seeing an upward movement, which is really exciting. So here's one at 3rd grade. If you look at their informational, I would say it's about 120 kids scored a 1. And then our blue line significantly increases in their post-assessment. 4th grade, similar data. 5th grade, writing scores from last year, and then 6th grade. I also was like, when you get in the data, you're like, well, what about this? So I pulled I pulled post data in narrative, because that's the only 2-year, local data that I have right now. We're coming up on our 2nd trimester, so we'll collect a 2nd genre. But at this point in time, I have 2016-17 narrative in all grade levels, and then their post data from this year, this fall. So I would say pretty much across the board, we're seeing an increase in narrative writing. Obviously, some grade levels are, have marked improvement. Like if you look at grade 3, 17% scored 2.5 or higher, and this year 51%. So I think that's something to celebrate. The other thing that you can do with this data, which you can't do with all data, but it's based on learning progressions, you can actually do a cross comparison. So we want to see that the score is not declining year over year. So this cohort is this cohort. This cohort is this cohort. This cohort is this cohort. So you're seeing that strategies that are being implemented in Writer's Workshop, which is something that's a significant shift for our teachers. We're no longer teaching the writing, we're teaching the reader or the writer. So we're doing very, very specialized, specific strategies on individual writers and helping them lift the level within each genre. So
this is a great chart, but are we able to get this with just the data point of at and above?
I can give it to you. See what that looks like? So you also have to keep in mind that when you're working with students and then data that's also significantly below grade level, we need to have a point of celebration. I think so that's something that I wanted to make sure to highlight. I mean, we had students that are scoring 0 and 1, and sometimes when you don't have a cutoff.
But the more disaggregated data we have, the better informed we can be.
And we have that, and that's what we also look at, but I'm happy to provide that for you. So I want to talk a little bit about Graham. So I shifted the data point from 2 to 4. And I did that purposefully, not to trick you. I did it because what I said before, that's one of our lowest performing schools, high number of 0s and 1s on the rubric, and to see some significant growth of students scoring 2 or above. And they're a school that's receiving direct coaching. So they're on day 5 of coaching this school year, where our coach comes in, works with 1 to 2 grade level at a time. So like, for example, today when we went in, we look at student work, teachers bring samples, they look at the learning progression, see where their students are to drive instruction. The coach goes and models a lesson in the classroom, and then they come back and debrief and plan for next time. So you can see that we have also something that was exciting to highlight, because I think typically in our upper grade, in the past slides that we've seen, those cohorts of students tend to score a little bit lower, and we're seeing some higher scores that are going in grade 4, 5, and 6. It's also important to note that grade 6 has a brand new writing kit, so they're working with even more rigorous standards. And something that's assumed with the writer's workshop that Lucy assumes is that students have received writing instruction since kindergarten in her philosophy, and then also those specific pointed strategies, so they build upon each other year after year after year. So if they haven't received it, it becomes more challenging. Okay, I'm going to move on to math. Do you have?
I was going to say before the math piece, just for this piece, you mentioned earlier that Readers and Writers Workshop that it looks like it's working on several schools, but there's some schools maybe that haven't bought in.
Yes.
We don't have to get into that, but I guess from my perspective it would be for us to think about how do we figure out, or how do we make all schools use this so it's moving forward. If the data is showing that it's going up, then that's what you need to do.
So something that I'll be sharing with the board on Friday is our 3-year implementation plan. And so that was something that when I came in the summer, I did my research and finding out what has been done in terms of professional development and kind of figuring out what we need to do and what we've already done. So there's a 3-year plan that's been drafted for support that includes the work that we've done this year, as well as rolling into the next 2 years and what that support will look like. And it will be increasing support at the school sites as well as summer intensives. And I'm also starting conversations. I met with Principal Neal and the department chair at the ELA department at the junior high, and we'll be looking at implementing writing in 7th and 8th grade starting next year. So there's going to be conversations of sustainability. If we're putting a lot of effort and energy into our students in kindergarten through 6th grade in this program, that making sure that we're continuing to support that kind of writer when they go to the junior high. So I'll be sharing that in your Friday report, what that looks like. And I can do more formal presentation in the future if that's something that you're interested in.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about math. I'm going to speed through it because I know we're beyond time.
Please.
Do you want me to pause it for a later date, or I was going to give you a quick update on the adoption?
I think with as much as we have on the agenda, should we
Just pause it.
That's fine. I can
pause it
You have
and,
the due time. But
and continue it at the next meeting?
But I would say this is one of the more important things. So if we prioritize other things, like to me, this is why we're here. It's to discuss these specific things. So if we can't even.
Okay, well, I think we need to make sure we manage our time so that we don't have to extend the meeting after 10 o'clock.
So how about we commit as the board, we won't ask questions till the end for this piece.
Okay, and we'll
You want me to
try to,
speed through it?
yeah, go through it quickly.
Now
and
I
we
have a
will-
lot less data, so it should be fast.
Okay.
Same thing, 2 years. It's new for K for 7 and 8. So this was 16, 17. You have your beginning of the year assessment and then end of the year. We know our math scores are an area that we need to spend a lot of time and energy, and that's something that we at Ed Services have devoted a lot of time and energy working with our leadership team, working directly with the departments at the high school, as well as rolling out a K through 12 math adoption pilot program, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is an area that needs intense focus, K through 12. So here's another view of this year. Beginning of the year, and we'll be collecting data again very soon to look at assessment number 2 in the area of math. So I want to talk to you about our adoption process really quickly. And so we have convened our curriculum council and kind of meshed it with our assessment council to create also a pilot committee all in one. Being such a small district, we have a number of teachers that sit on multiple committees, so why not make it easier for our teachers? So We had the opportunity to do some research in August, September, October, spoke with the county experts in the area of math. We got lists of California already adopted curriculum throughout the state. What are the top programs that school districts are adopting? What are programs that surrounding school districts in our county are adopting or have adopted? We're the very last ones. So it's sometimes a blessing because then we get to see what other counties or other school districts have done, and we can learn from them. So we were able to take an extensive list and narrow it down to 5 publishers. We looked at 3 categories: K-5, 6-8, together at middle school, and then 9-12, secondary. Each of those categories had 5 publisher presentations. Our teachers were amazing. It's hard to sit all day and listen to, publishers come and present their whole programs. They did it. It was fantastic. And then they narrowed it down to 2 that they wanted to pilot. They also had time to research it on their own, check out the publishers, talk to neighboring colleagues, what they thought. We've selected the following publishers. So in K through 12, we're piloting Big Ideas Math. Big Ideas Math is a program that's been around a long time in the secondary level, 6 through 12. It's highly rated. They are just rolling out a brand new K through 5 program, and they're allowing us to take a first peek at it. It will come out officially in April, but we're able to pre-pilot their program. So we're really excited about having that opportunity. So K-12. K through 5, we're also piloting Math Expressions by Houghton Mifflin. It's been adopted by a number of school districts in the area, in Bay Area. We are publishing Glencoe by McGraw-Hill in 6 through 8. And the 6th grade teachers have been brought in on that because they haven't had an opportunity to pilot that before. They've been dabbling a little bit at the junior high. And then the second pilot program at the high school is Pearson Envision Math. And they have an updated curriculum. So they're looking at that. Our teachers are currently in the throes of their pilot. So really exciting to report that the entire math department at the high school is piloting both programs. And they are super passionate and excited and know that there needs to be some significant shifts in their program. They've been wonderful. Junior high and elementary programs are also, so they are started on the 22nd. They all have been trained by the publishers. They will go until March 16th. We are going to be sending out parent surveys to the classrooms that have received pilot exposure, so we can get parent feedback through parent surveys, as well as hold a public viewing the week of March 19, 20, 21. And parents will be able to give feedback as well to that. We're going to hold it here in the district office, and our committee will come and vote on the 22nd of March, and then come and bring a recommendation to you all, and then you will make the final decision. So that's our timeline. It's been a really exciting and rigorous process to really focus on math, and we're excited about what the future holds and having a really comprehensive, Common Core aligned, supportive program for our students to move forward. Data next steps is that we're going to continue to collect and analyze our trimester 2 data and local benchmarks. We're starting to look at how do we phase in IABs, which are interim assessment blocks, which are available through our CAS system. As well as how do we infuse MARS and MAC assessments, which is something that complements our work with SVMI, especially in the 9th and 10th grade levels, because that seems to be a gap in data that we have in the area of math. And then also whatever our math adoption, if that's something that you all approve, looking at their benchmarks and assessment and how we might be able to infuse that and collect data around those adoptions. I think that's it. I went super fast.
Thank you. That was great. Mr. Nguyen?
I'm sorry, Ms. Black. So the question, I do have actually some homework for you or our staff before the timeline of us voting on this product is. So the iReady metrics as far as below level, on level, and above level, right? It's very similar to the CASP, the state aspect data results, which is the CASP scores. I mean, they use different language. It's, you know, meets expectations, exceeds expectation, but they're pretty much just aligned. With that being said, when I perused through the our CASP data for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, I just took a snapshot. The state score shows that 47% of our 3rd graders who are either at or exceeding expectations based on the SBAC scores. But then iReady here has it at 58%. In the 4th grade, it's 38% from the state and 54% in iReady. It's similar in the math area. There's some inconsistencies, and there's a huge gap between what the state is able to identify, or based on the state testing, how our students perform with that, you know, wide-ranging metric, versus how they performed in the local metric, which is iReady. First question is, can we explain? I don't need explanation now. Can we explain that discrepancy? Why that is? And secondly, is iReady calibrated to the SBAC test? And if it's not, how much value does it have for us? Because if we're testing, we're measuring, and then we're getting a false sense of, you know, performance, and then when the students then take the state testing and they show otherwise, there's a misalignment there, right? So I think we have to reconcile that misalignment and see what is happening, and what explains that discrepancy. Because, I mean, as great as local data is, and of course it's not just iReady, it's, you know, the grading and it's everything else that's done in the classroom. But the public looks at the SBAC data. That's what they judge, rightfully or wrongfully. That's what they judge our district and our schools by, is what percent of students have met or exceeded expectations. And if these two tests aren't calibrated, we really have to see why they're not calibrated and see if we need to continue with this product if it's not calibrated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I had a kind of a question or a comment, and that is that this uneven implementation by schools, and I imagine within schools by teachers, is quite bothersome. If we're supposed to be looking at improving all students, we need to make sure that all teachers are prepared and all schools are implementing the programs with fidelity. And I know we have a problem because we have only so many professional development days, and it has to meet the needs of all of our teachers. And the fact that the summer training is not mandatory, it's optional, so we're getting an uneven amount of teacher preparation. But I think it's really important that we hold principals of our schools accountable for implementing these programs. Math and science is the most important thing we do for our students, I think. And there should be no excuse for them not to do everything they can to ensure that programs are implemented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, I know for the English language arts we do, Readers and Writers Workshop, we're talking about how we're figuring out to implement next steps. You mentioned that there's a 3-year plan. For the math, I heard SVMI and then math adoption benchmark. So are those the two? So our math adoption is our program, and then the SVMI, is that like the Readers and Writers Workshop, or is there something else?
So that's a good question. So SVMI is actually more the coaching and diving deeply into the standards that supports the curriculum. So I think a big shift, and this is a whole other conversation, but a big shift in Common Core is no longer, we're not, like, the curriculum is one piece, but we really need to be analyzing the standards, and there's not going to be one program that is going to meet all the needs of all our kids. And so SVMI allows teachers to be able to bring in, especially that performance-based assessment and the problem solving and the mathematical practices that tend to be lacking in a more kind of traditional algorithm type math program. So it's a nice complement. So that's the membership that we purchased this year. So a $6,000 membership that gives teachers resources to number talks, problem of the month, Mars assessment, ongoing professional development. So it really helps our teachers dive deeply into the standards and mathematical practices and understand how to implement them in their classrooms. So it's that coaching supplement.
Okay. So I guess for me, like a Readers and Writers Workshop is like a tangible program that shows that that's supporting kids in specifics, narrative or opinion or in their writing skills.
Yeah.
For math, if we don't have a program, then we should look at developing a program, especially in terms of our scores, or figure out like, well, I guess both in tangent, see the results of SVMI supporting the kids.
And that's the process that we're going through right now, and that when we bring a recommendation to you all in May, we'll deeply outline the programs that we're bringing forth to you in all three grade spans, as well as have teachers come and speak to you about their experience and why they've chosen those programs for you all to review and then decide if we could move
All
forward.
right, thank you. And is that for math and English language arts or for one?
Just math. English language, we've already adopted,
Okay.
board adopted, and we're not planning on bringing anything forth.
And later on, as you saw in our previous discussion, we will be bringing forward a matrix of upcoming adoptions. So we're doing math first, and then we're working with the county to start to look at science. Social studies is also on the horizon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 9.2 Capital Fund Status Update, and we have two speakers that would like to address you on this, or address us on this. Ms. Parks? Would you like to wait for the presentation? Okay, I'll call, and Mr. Knoop, would you like to wait for the presentation, or would you like to speak first?
I'll just say a few things. It's just a question.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I have a question about Fund 210. And, you know, I don't speak on behalf of the CBOC. In fact, I think the CBOC has quorum here, so we cannot discuss anything. But I just want to have a statement about the facts. I see that the amount for non-measure G in Fund 210 is about 150 something, and I thought it was more like 47, 48 measure B money, so I just wanted to make sure with that number was correct. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Richards?
This is a very, very brief update that the board had requested just on the current status of our various capital funds. And so the question that Mr. Knoop had just asked with regard to things that are not Measure G that are in Fund 210, we have about 100 and change left in non-Measure G funds. The non-Measure G funds for many years were sitting in LAIF and got a significant boost with a LAIF payout of old accumulated interest. And when we pulled the final funds from LAIF and transferred everything into the county treasury, so they did get a chunk of income at the end of closing last year and at the beginning of the current year when we transferred the money in October. The Measure G funds currently we're just under 12 million if we take into account all current encumbrances with what remains in the Measure G funds. With regard to the Capital Facilities Fund, that's the developer fees. We have additional information coming to the board on developer fees. Well, we have an action item tonight, but then we also have the new rates. Developer fee rates increases were approved by the State Allocation Board at their board meeting in January. So we have updated our developer fee study, and it will be coming to the board in March so that we can implement the new rates. So that'll be coming forward. Watch for that to be the 2 board meetings from now, because there's a multi-week advertising process that has to happen. So the 2nd board meeting in March will have some further information on new revenue for that particular fund. And then Fund 400, which is our special reserve for capital outlay, There's still funds from prior to the sale of Russian of about $185,000 and change. And then with the proceeds of the sale of Russian at this time, we have $10.6 million unencumbered. That doesn't mean that it isn't committed for other things that the board took action on. I actually have a more detailed screen right here. It's a little bit busy, and I apologize, it's a little bit small to read because of the font size to get everything across. But this is sort of a detail of everything that's happened so far with Russian versus what was approved originally. So when we go back to the first big thing that we did with the proceeds of Russian was the reorganization of Bunker and Milani Elementary into Birch Grove. And so we had two pieces to that. We had some costs that were specifically related to the merger, and then we also had the 21st Century pilot for furniture. And between those two, we had about a $1.9 million budget. Well, the principals and the teachers worked very hard in economizing what they wanted, and they kept their scopes pretty well under control for what they wanted to do, but they were able to outfit their classrooms and take care of everything else we needed to take care of for the merger, and to the tune of about $716,000 for those two schools. So we actually have about $1.25 million left, and they already have all of their furniture. So that is now available to come back to the board to be reallocated at a future time because we've finished the pilot of the implementation of that.
So, Mr. Richards, I'm sorry, your previous slide had a 10.6 million, and then this slide, because of the committed, so the actual available is 6.9, is that correct?
Okay, yes, so 10.6 is what remains in the fund right now as far as balance of what we had at the beginning of the current school year and all the current encumbrances. Everybody that's issued a PO, whether it was for something for their wish list or any other purchase orders that we've done, the remaining balance, that we haven't closed out retention on the painting project, so we still have some things that are sitting out there in current encumbrances in Fund 400. And some of the items...
but the real number that we have to quote-unquote play with is 6.9, because we can't step on what's committed.
We still have the remaining commitments. So if we just look at the remainders of these items that are in this more detailed screen, technology, as we know, the board committed that to be a multi-year rollout. So it's been rolling out in groups of schools over a multi-year plan. So, so far in actual expenditures, we are at about $1.25 million, and we have about another $1.1 million left to go across that project. The exterior improvements had a $4 million budget, of which we've expended so far about $1.75 million. And then we had the school wish list projects that were $636,000, of which we've expended about $100,000, and we have encumbered right now about $182,000 on those particular projects at this time. We then had the cafeteria table replacement project was about $28,000. We have some expenditures related to the Whiteford Music Consolidation. The portion that was not deemed to be eligible to be utilized from the Capital Facilities Fund was utilized out of the Russian proceeds. It was about $1,540. We've had legal expenses of about $2,000 in the fund over the past, since the sale of Russian. And the treasury charges, that's something new. The county treasury has been traditionally netting their charges against the interest. And during the county audit, they got told they really weren't supposed to be doing that. So now they've split it out. So now they're charging us treasury charges and then reporting to us a higher level of interest, and we have to net the two. So we've earned about $95,000 in interest, and we've had treasury charges of $37.99 against that. So the bottom right is sort of the reconciliation of everything from the day that we sold Russian Elementary School and everything that's happened related to it over the course of time. So interest we've earned on the money, the initial cost of sale that were in that initial year, which you don't see on this screen because that happened in 2015, and then the transfer out to the special reserve for non-capital outlay, then what was been utilized so far with the various projects and the current commitments thereon, but with an add back for what remains from the merger / 21st century classrooms.
So by my count, taking all your previous slides, and with just this 6.9, we have $28.3 million left in all bond funds put together.
For all three?
For everything.
If you add all of the funds together as far as various capital funds, yes, that would be correct at this time.
Thank you.
I have a question about technology. So far, we spent 1.2 million, and we budgeted 2.3. Will we need to spend all that money?
We will be spending a very large project has not yet come to the board with regard to the projections and that process is actually currently the RFP for that is currently under development, and that's a very expensive project, so that is yet to roll out.
I believe we installed those as part of the merger projectors
was it the high school? Yeah.
District-wide. This is district-wide. That's not part of the Birch Grove.
No, but I mean, the point I was going to make is that these 21st century classrooms at Birch Grove were supposed to be kind of a test bed for us. And before we go in and put fancy equipment in all of our classrooms, have we really, I think even one of our board members asked for an evaluation of the equipment that we put into Birch Grove in terms of its usefulness and whether it's indicative of what we should be going forward with technology for the rest of the schools.
Okay, I think we're talking about the same night, but we're talking about two different line items that were in there as far as the classroom furniture piece versus the technology piece.
No.
So Larry, because you can probably address better what's going on, why don't you come over with us where we are with the technology piece specifically for the Birch Groves, because they're part of the next project, right?
Yeah.
So the 21st century furniture was totally separate from the
right.
technology.
I understand.
They weren't the same thing. We have done pilots of the technology we were looking at. We piloted overhead projector. Those are pretty standard. We piloted some interactive short throw projectors. We piloted flat screen television. We piloted a bunch of different things to just, to come to our to build our specification. If that's
okay. I mean, were those piloted as part of the Birch Grove merger?
No, we piloted them at various locations, including Birch Grove.
Including Birch Grove. Okay.
Right. We didn't pilot a whole school. We piloted because we wanted secondary, primary.
And so you've gotten good input back.
I believe we've gotten a lot of good feedback. We waited a little bit to. Obviously, this has been a while, but we waited a little bit because there was some new technology that was sort of on the cusp at the time that has sort of materialized now for just not to get too into it, but lamp-free projectors. And so we're ready to move forward.
And less expensive ones, so maybe we don't have to spend the rest of that money?
We'll see, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Ms. Crocker.
I wanted to underline something. I see that the merger cost $10,000. Is that the total cost of the merger? What was the total cost of the merger?
No, the total was $715,787. That's how much. That's by fiscal year.
But that includes the furniture, and the furniture was a separate piece.
Yes.
Well, so the actual merger itself was $10,000.
No.
What was the actual merger itself?
I don't have. I consolidated those because they're in the same object code. I didn't pull individual invoices to break between those.
So you don't know how much it cost for the furniture?
Not off the top of my head, but I can pull the data.
So that when we look at what's left, has the evaluation of the classroom furniture taken place? Has there been an evaluation so we know what kinds of things we're looking to put in the other schools, particularly the other elementary schools?
Letty has been collecting feedback from the sites on the furniture, so we don't have a report with regard to that tonight for the board, so we'll get together and compile that.
I think it's important to separate out. There has been talk in the city about the cost of the merger, and I think that they look at this and they figure that's the cost of the merger. It was not the cost of the merger because there's furniture involved, and that's a separate piece, as technology is a separate piece. It just happened to coincide with when the merger took place. So I think we need to be very specific in terms of what the actual cost was to change the format to two different schools that have different grade levels.
I can pull that data.
I think that would be an important piece to have because it's not. I can't imagine it's any more than 100,000. I can't imagine it's more than that. I would say it would be less.
Actually, I also think that that the furniture was not something that we approved to go into the other schools.
We have not. We said we were going to look and evaluate and get the teacher input in terms of what was really, in other words, if you take a desk that may be 20 years old but still functioning and still works with the teacher, then they should be able to have the choice that they do that rather than getting softballs to sit on or getting the triangular table so they can move it in different modulars. So I think that's something that there needs to be the ability of the teacher to say, this is what functions for me as a teacher in the classroom, and this is what I prefer. So that going out and saying everyone's going to have the new furniture is not a particularly smart thing to do. It needs to be based on what the teachers want in the classroom.
I would actually disagree with that,
Okay.
because I think that runs counter to, I think, our next set of presentations as far as the district-wide strategic master plan. I think there should be consistency and not allow the teacher to choose specifically, because you would run into an equity problem with that, right? Where if I as a teacher choose a particular product in one school and then another teacher is allowed to choose a different product, then the students aren't getting the same type of experiences. And so I think part of the overall vision of the district is to provide equitable programming and services and products for all of our students.
I think it has to do with some things, that's true, but in terms of how the teacher wants to organize the classroom, that is something that is the teacher's responsibility and right to do so. And so if you have a lot of small tables versus large tables, I think when the teacher leaves, that is an equity process for when someone comes and takes over the classroom. But I think that we need to be sensitive to what works for the teaching style of the person that's in the classroom.
Right, but I think it's also important to have district standards, and then not standards as far as good standards, bad standards, but just overall district standards as far as what is the baseline and what is acceptable. Because it's very unfair for one classroom to have 20-year-old desk and the other to have brand new desks, for example, just because the teacher chose to keep the old desk.
Because it's new doesn't mean it's better.
Well, yeah.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Ms. Parks, and I think, our practice in the past had always been to have speakers first, and I think to be consistent, I'm going to be recommending to the board that we always have the speaker first.
That's before our discussion, not necessarily
before our before a presentation, before whatever the item is. Okay, Ms. Parks.
Again, you're one of 5, so I would appreciate it being
that's what
a
I'm
topic
going to
of discussion.
recommend to my board members. Okay.
Oh, it would be nice. Okay. I first questioned the use of developers' fees used to pay for a warrant on August 1st of 2017. Then on August 15th, I met with Superintendent Sanchez and outlined my concerns about the legality of the previous 2 years' worth of expenditures out of developer fee account. Over the last 4 months, I have publicly and repeatedly informed you that the only lawful use of these funds is to mitigate overcrowding caused by the development on which the fees were levied, and that these funds are being unlawfully diverted to other purposes. Government Code 65973A states that conditions of overcrowding means that the total enrollment of a school, including enrollment from proposed development, exceeds the capacity of the school as determined by the governing board of the district. Other than the increased enrollment of approximately 43 students this year, Newark Unified School District has had a declining enrollment for the previous 17 years. Your own 2017 justification study and Davis demographic study show that even with the new developments, district enrollment is estimated to only increase by 400 to 500 students. The justification study shows the district's enrollment capacity at 8,926. With the current enrollment at approximately 6,000 and projections nowhere near 8,926, clearly Newark Unified is nowhere near capacity, especially with the proposed class sizes. And it is not lawful to create artificial overcrowding at a school site to fabricate a false overcrowding to excuse otherwise unlawful spending. I ask you to stop the spending of developers' fees on any expenditures not related to vendors who provide enrollment and capacity projections. Please be on notice. If one or more members of the community seek a judicial remedy to solve the problem, the district will not only unnecessarily pay defense costs that are needed for employee salaries and student educational services, but the district will also be required to pay the fees and costs of the citizen who bring the action to stop the unlawful spending I have described. Plus, you've never, ever approved a budget of spending. It's been done by others. Regarding Fund 40, With the Vanner's departure and the interim MOT director, will the wish list projects continue as planned? I guess you believe, I'm assuming that you're going to move forward with that. On November 15, 2017, a Schilling parent sent pictures of the peeling paint at Schilling to all of you. Has anyone followed up with the Schilling email you got? I also heard Graham has bubbling and peeling paint. The furniture project, which you were just speaking about, you did mention that it was to be an evaluated pilot. I went back and I watched the video because you went back and forth. Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Nguyen were very specific on the fact that they wanted it district-wide. They wanted the equality. A pilot is a pilot. That means that you intend to evaluate it. Where's the evaluation? In January, when you were presented with the music sign project, I mentioned that they had on their wish list benches, which they had already gotten. The cost of the benches and the sign would put them over their allotment. How was that resolved?
Thank you, Ms. Parks.
1 second. Ooh, baby.
Okay, next we move on to...
Can I get the answers to my questions? It's an agenda item.
In
regards to the questions regarding...
Your questions can be answered offline by Mr. Richards.
Well, that makes it very transparent.
Next, we move on to 10.1, which is public comment on non-agenda items, and I apologize, we are supposed to do this by 8:30, and it's already over that. First, Mr. Henneberry.
Yeah, I'm John Henneberry. I'm a Newark voter. I'm going to comment on the recent $3.2 million budget shortfall and the teachers' layoffs and other staff layoffs that resulted from this. It's a multifaceted, dynamic problem, and it goes beyond this school district. First off, the news reports indicate that the school district is trying to solve this problem by increasing student enrollment. That's going to be a problem because Newark School District has such a low rating. There was mainstream media reports about 6 months ago that Newark was one of the worst of about 120 cities in the greater Bay Area, and it got such a low rating because Newark schools were in about the bottom 10 of this 120 school district list. They're just horrible. So when it comes to making a decision whether or not people are going to move to Newark, buy a house, pay taxes, people look at property values, they look at their tax bill, including the Measure G funds, $39 for every $100,000 in assessed value, and they're looking at the quality of the school district. You look at all those numbers, the equation doesn't add up, and there's a high degree of probability that Newark is going to continue to lose students here, okay? You're not going to get that increase. It's possible, but all indications are just going to move in the other direction. Okay. Problems go beyond the Newark School District with regards to the funding shortfall. There's been widespread reports of financial mismanagement here at the Newark School District, but again, I see the problem going beyond that. Newark residents are subject to local taxes, and those local taxes are being levied by two distinctly separate tax authorities. One being the City of Newark, which is governed by Newark City Council, and the other tax district is known as the Newark School District, which is governed by the Newark School Board. This is important, describing this as in terms of tax districts, because in the state of California, in order to raise taxes, we need voter approval, okay? And to get voter approval, we need to get something on the ballot. What does an ordinary citizen need to do? Well, they need to collect signatures from 10% of all registered voters. Here in Newark, that would be about 2,000 signatures, considering we got about 20,000 registered voters. Well, a local tax authority, such as the school district or the city of Newark, only needs a simple majority vote of its members to put something on the ballot. Okay? So here's where the problem comes in. The public can only bear a certain amount in local taxes, and the city tax district is absorbing lots of those local taxes through utility taxes and through increased sales taxes, and the public doesn't have a willingness to provide taxes for the school district. So because this is an election year, I'm encouraging all qualified, responsible members, residents of Newark, please get on the ballot. Please basically overthrow Newark City Council and put reversing measures on the ballot to get rid of the stupid utility taxes and also the sales taxes, and then from there the Newark School District can put tax measures on the ballots to raise taxes. So it's basically a shift in tax revenue spread across two different
Thank you,
tax
Mr.
districts.
Hanbury.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Mr. Knoop?
Good evening. I want to talk about spending money, and we have very little of it. It looks like Newark Unified is getting some really big opponents. American Civil Liberties Union, First Amendment Coalition. We're talking about that Newark Unified is suing a citizen for $500,000 in fees. Is that morally right? Let me qualify it. I think a school district should have the right to defend itself. There's a lot of litigation, there's a lot of frivolous lawsuits. Somebody says, you know, I need $1 million, and sometimes you have to incur expenses to stand your ground, and I support that. But in a case where a citizen wants a public records request, and it goes wrong, I don't want to get into the details, you have to ask yourself the question, is it a good way to spend $250,000 in pursuing this? Something that happened 3 years ago, a bunch of emails that were sent. Eventually, that bill, if Newark loses, is going to be put on the general fund. And looking at the lawsuit, you know, you cannot claim expenses if they haven't been incurred. So we're already about, what is it, $244,000 of expenses. So this board needs to, at any time, make an evaluation whether pursuing these cases is worth the money. You do it for Newark. You don't do it for a law firm. If a law firm says we want to, as a matter of principle, go to the end and go to the Supreme Court, you should tell them you go your own way, but don't put on our letterhead Newark Unified. What is Newark Unified to do with these kind of abstract court cases? As a board, you have the right to initiate any process you deem necessary in the interest of the district. So if your council tells you, no, you got to do it, just listen to us. We're at council, we need to tell you. You can get a second opinion. You have the right to do that. Nobody can stop you. Second, you can have also the right to cancel the contract with this law firm if you deem that to be necessary. Don't spend unnecessary money. Again, I agree with defending yourself against frivolous lawsuits. You sometimes have to spend money. But $250,000 chasing a public records request with emails that, how relevant are these emails now? Are you continuing this? Remember, if the mainstream press finds this, it's going to be a reputation damage for the district. Please take that in mind.
Thank you. Ms. Parks?
Good evening. At this point, I wanted to talk to you about your LCAP committee that you appointed in January. There was some concern expressed at that meeting about the composition of the committee, the numbers. There was 42, and I remember expressing concern to all of you about the magnitude, and the concern or the countermeasure by some of your staff was the fact that they wanted everybody to be included. At the time, I had pointed out that some of your meetings last year only held about, or you only had about 10 people attending. Not much has changed this year. And one of the concerns that I have is that they adopted bylaws this year. And the bylaws, first of all, they say that, I mean, there's several things that are wrong with it. One of them being is it says it's a superintendent or the designee should establish the committee. However, the education code is very clear that it is the governing board that establishes the committee. The voting membership does show the 42 members as voting. However, they now have changed the terminology to where they are recognizing only active members. They've now altered your appointed committee of 42 members, which makes it a legislative body. The minute that you set it in place, according to your board policy, it is now a legislative body. It is now governed by the Brown Act. They have now changed and saying that the committee is now made up of 20 active members and that they only need 11 for their majority, instead of the 42 members and having 22 as the majority. The last meeting only had 14 members in it. They have yet to have, of the 4 meetings that they have held, they have yet to have more than that 14. And so I understand wanting to include as many as possible, but sometimes numbers don't generate the involvement that you want. I know personally that some of the people that were on the list didn't ask to be on it. So I don't even know how some of that happened. But again, my concern is that they're usurping your authority. You appointed a committee, and that's not who's convening, and that's not the parameters that it's functioning, and there's bylaws out there that are counter to what you had intended. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we move on to old business, 11.1 developer fees, Fund 25 annual report.
This is the annual report that has come before the board on a previous occasion. It was pointed out by a member of the public, we actually had some incorrect education code section numbers as the code had been renumbered, so it has been brought back to the board for action with all the corrected sections of the education code.
Does anyone want to speak to this? If not, I entertain a motion. I'm sorry, Ms. Parks, I must have missed it. Okay, go ahead.
As I stated earlier, over the last few months, I have informed you of the district is unlawfully spending developer fee money that is supposed to be spent to reduce district overcrowding. Tonight, you are being asked to approve resolution 2082. This report contains errors and includes unlawful spending. This resolution was tabled in January and pulled earlier this month. Tonight, I am here to inform you that the revised resolution you are being asked to adopt is still flawed, and ask you to table it and keep tabling it until your administration gets it right. On page 2, which is Exhibit B, it references Government Code Section 66001D 1 through 4. This does not exist. Under item A, you were to identify the facilities, not just list general projects. The account reconciliation form shows the new junior high bleacher assessment at $5,000. Your justification study shows that the capacity for that site is 1,431 students. How in the world do you perceive to use developer fee money when conditions of overcrowding do not exist at the junior high nor anywhere else in the district? The next item listed is, or another item listed is the dry rot damage assessment of $1,530. Education Code 176203 specifies that this money is not for the regular maintenance nor routine repair of school buildings and facilities. Facility consultant, $10,000. Mr. Dutra's work for the district had nothing to do with the new developments in town, or had everything to do with a new development in town, and that's what he was working with you on moving or relocating your district office over to the city's new civic center. It had nothing to do with overcrowding of students. Since these documents are flawed, you must once again pull them and instruct the administration to correct these errors. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, Ms. Crocker.
In terms of the demographic study and the software, was that the Dutra thing, or was that with the company we took out of, that gave us information about new students?
No, that's Davis Demographics.
Right. So that's the Davis, so it had nothing to do with the Dutra. Okay, thank you.
So the resolution that we're asked to pass, did that pass through legal muster as far as being appropriate?
Yes, we can step back into executive if you want me to brief you on that.
No, as long as we...
Relative to Fund 25. Yeah. Otherwise, I would recommend anyone make comments about Fund 25. We have had legal opinion. We were acting with legal counsel.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Should we put this forward to the next agenda so we can hear in closed session what the legal...
I thought we had gotten information in the email. Didn't we get information on that?
Yeah, I think that the information was not very comprehensive compared
to... I'm comfortable with accepting Superintendent Sanchez's statement that it's already passed legal muster and what we're approving is
Okay,
appropriate.
then I'll entertain a motion and a second.
I'll move to pass.
I'll second.
Mr. Nguyen made the motion, Ms. Crocker seconds.
I need to pull up my voting here. Okay.
Please vote.
You have a question?
Yeah, let's just wait until the second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I know one of the last times the issue was the government code section that was incorrect. I guess I'm not going to look it up and.
Yeah, so Ms. Parks mentioned 66001 D1 through 4. They are now renumbered D1A, D1B, D1C, D1D, D1E, D1F. So we did go in, and if you look under Section 3, findings regarding the fund, in Section C, it now says Government Code Section 6601 D1A, Section D is 66001 D1B, okay. Section E 66001 D1C, D1D, etc. And then G is now part of D2 and 66001E. So they've been renumbered from what they used to be. In the resolution itself, correct.
Mr. Preciado, did you have a question?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, please vote.
Wait,
4 ayes. I have to display it. 4 ayes. Thank you.
It was Exhibit B that was wrong.
We're at 11.2 now, I believe.
Yeah, we're on 11.2. Vanner, final presentation. We have 2 individuals that would like to speak on this. Ms. Burns? I would.
We've not discussed, we've not determined.
I allowed it. Yes,
So, yeah.
go ahead. You can do it after. Ms. Parks? Okay.
Can I wait?
No,
Who was that?
that was me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Superintendent Sanchez, Board. I'm here to what I call the celebration of the Measure G and the relationship that Vanner has with this district. And tonight, I just wanted to give you kind of a general overview of what you will be getting at the end of March, where at the end of March we will be presenting to Brian and to Superintendent Sanchez a full report on where we were when we started on November the 1st and where we are at the end that we vacate the facility. This is just to give you an idea. This is the Measure G language, just to give you some background to that. And I just want to let you know that we, in October of 2017, we presented a semi-update of where we are financially, what projects we have done per year, which you will see here very shortly. And just wanted to bring it up during this time, but to let you know that when you look at 2017, it will be based on estimates, because we, at the time in November, we did not have that full report. But by the time March rolls around, we will have the report and specific numbers. One thing I just want to talk to you about that during the time that we were here, we were able to work with your, you had a district-wide, there was a lot of assessments done, and you did a district-wide facility needs assessment. In 2013, we did quite a few. We did the HVAC assessment, controls, paving, and roofing evaluations. Then in 14, we looked at some of your equipment survey, portable assessments, which was real fun, and then HVAC equipment study. And what I want to do here is briefly go through each one of the years and kind of give you an idea. This is a chart that I believe you have seen. If not, you will see it in more detail when we do the final version of this in the end of March. This is the work that we did in 2013. As you can see, we started with $63 million, which you saw you had passed in the Measure G. And if you look on the far right side, it says remaining funds. And what you'll see is every year you'll see where it keeps counting down to where you are. Okay, in 2014, we bumped that up from about $3 million to, it looks like $10.5 million. We finally got ourselves moving. and moving forward, and we did HVAC upgrades, mold remediation, roof replacements, paving, some EMS controls, and a little bit of technology and security. And in 2015, we did roof replacement, HVAC replacement, paving, and some clocks and bells. And that was about $15 million worth of work. By the way, each one of these years are not really, they're just the summer months, because we did all this work during the summer when the students were not in school, obviously. 2016 was a great year. That's when I came. And so it was $12.8 million, and we did roof replacement and HVAC replacement, as you can see. And then in 2017, this is based on November's of last year's estimates. And as you can see, pointed out to me just a while ago, and I realized about 3 hours ago, that the $1 million that we show spent for the science classrooms did not happen. So when you do see the final report, there'll be a variation of this. This was at that time, it was money that was going to be encumbered and to do the STAR Lab, but that has not happened at this time. And so based on our estimates based in November, we were around $13 million still in the good on your bond, which I think is an exceptional for a school district to have only $63 million and do all the work that you have done. And I did notice, thank you, Brian, that it is actually $11,983,250.35 is what you had on your list of remaining funds. This will give you an idea of kind of the flow of way when we sold the bonds, when we did the money, and you can look at this, and you can see every school district I've ever worked for would love to see something like this, where you have more money at the end than you have, than we have spent. And then coming at the end, I just want to kind of give you a background. In November, we met with Superintendent Sanchez and our brave Brian, and we were talked about that since there was not any projects that was listed to be done in 2018, none of them that were committed by the board because y'all had other things you needed to take care of, and obviously that just rolled on. The time for anything to happen in 2018 summer was gone by November. So looking at that, looking at my staff and looking at what's left to do, we only had the 2 projects that were left this summer, which was the roofs at the high school and then some painting. We did some painting across the district for all the sites. So we went to Superintendent Sanchez and said, you know, I think it may be time that we can make the break. You know, there's not always a good time to make a break, but I thought this time would be a great time to do that. And Superintendent Sanchez said that was perfect. He thought that was good too. So in November, we started this process of let's try to make the break. And so we set down some guidelines that we were not going to do any adding more work to our agenda. We were going to just finish out what we got. And at the time, we figured sometime by the end of February, we'd be completely through, but actually, in reality, it's going to be by the end of March. By the time we get all the punch lists done, by the time we get all the paperwork and the reconciliation of the funds and stuff together, probably the end of March. And so, on that note too, he asked us if we could make sure that we did, from our perception of being here 5 years, what would be the recommendations that we would like to leave with you for you to consider. And if you know, we gave you a very nice, colorful detail of the wish list and items that really still need to be done. And so what we did is we evaluated, the staff and I evaluated that, and we came up with these lists here. They're not necessarily in ranking order of what we would do. They're just things that we consider to be high profile or based on what we know of what we spent on the bond. These are some of the items that still will go with that, and obviously you probably can't read that from here. But the top one is the STEAM or the STAR Lab. That's still in there to be looked at. The complete remaining HVACs, and we'll make sure you're clear that in 2011 you did an HVAC assessment, and we replaced the units that were beyond the life cycle. Well, since that time, there is probably at least 50 more units to date that need to be replaced that has beyond the life cycle. And so that is what this is This is referring to as those that are beyond the life cycle since the passage of Measure G. Also, there was a removal of the portables. We've had lots and lots of talk. Brian and I have talked about this for several years. There's a lot of portables out here that really do not need to be used, and they usually are not. You need to have a plan in place, and that was a suggestion of us, is getting those removed, and those that you're going to keep, you get them updated. Door hardware. This is something that the MOT has come to us, and we've discussed this very extensively, replacing the entire district with more secure hardware. In light of things that have happened in the last week, I still think that this is a really big priority, to be able to install hardware where you only have one single point of entry, or you got a way that you really need to protect who comes in and out of your buildings. And then finally, the replacement of the emergency generator. That is on the priority list of the MOT. And so that is something that we want to leave with you. One thing I want to talk to you briefly about those, as you think about us leaving, I want you to know that even though we'll be off the premises, we will still be available if you need us. All you got to do is call us. We're right up the road or down the road, depending on where we are at that day, and we'll be down here to take care of it. Also, we've got a couple of one-year walkthroughs for warranty walkthroughs. We will be here to do that. We'll come back in and do that. That's not an issue. It's not a cost. But we'll be here to make sure that we finish those walkthroughs based on the work that we did this summer. All right? And then I'll be probably attending a couple more. You'll see me a couple more board meetings. One of them is for a change order that I believe you have already discussed. It'll be our last change order that's coming to you. And then possibly some closeouts and just some formalities of this project's closed out, our contract is closed out. So they will be here, not anything that I'll give a discussion to, but it'll be something that I can be here and be available for any questions and all that. And so then my final picture I love is that the sky's the limit for our children, for our students. The sky's the limit. We hear a lot of things that just, we worry about this and worry about that. But, we need to stay focused. And the focus is reach the limit and go further. And that's what our students need to be. I want to thank y'all for allowing us to be here this long, for being a partner in this program. Thank you for letting us be here. I think that I look at these things as not as just a professional endeavor. We come in and we go away and we never see you again. It's a relationship builder. I've learned from each one of you. I've had very close relationship with your staff, all of them, and they're great people. I think you may have some troubles right now, but I think the future's bright. I believe you've got some certain people in place. I believe you've got a head on your shoulders for the board meeting and for the board, and I really just want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of that. So with that, have you got any questions?
I just have an addition or correction on the first page when it talks about projects list. You eliminated the music elementary school in that list.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So it's just a point of information.
All right, I will take care of it.
There were projects that were involved with it, so.
I should remember that one.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all of your service and for putting together such a nice kind of synopsis to wrap up your work with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have our speakers?
Yes, we will now have Ms. Burns.
Hello, my name is Jane Burns, and I am a science teacher at Newark Memorial. I was going to ask, where was that $1 million spent? But now I know that it hasn't been spent. And so I'm really here to let you know that we do need to fulfill the requirement to update our aging science labs. We've been waiting a long time. We have a lot of immediate needs. We've been just kind of cobbling things together and getting by with sinks that don't work, electrical that doesn't work, no lab chairs for our tables, just a lot of general maintenance in our labs that need to be done. So I'm just here to remind you that that was part of Measure G. We're still waiting. Our project manager's just leaving. So we're wondering, what is the plan? We hope you have a plan, and we hope you're going to get back to us soon with your plan. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'll pass. My question was about 1 million.
Okay. So then, under new business, we have the 2018-19 school calendar.
And at your individual spaces and in a stack in the back is a revision to what was originally presented with regard to the upcoming calendar. The bargaining unit, when they voted on what was going to be the changed calendar, did not accept it. And by terms of our contract with NTA, if we haven't come to agreement on a new calendar, the current calendar rolls. So what I handed out to all of you and what we have a stack in the back is the rolling of the current year calendar and what it would look like for next year for the board's information.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion.
So I would ask with, because what's listed online is the old one, so I just want to make sure it's clear that which one are we voting for?
It would be basically rolling the status quo. Technically, because we're rolling the status quo, and that's an existing term of the contract, I don't know that it necessarily has to have a vote of the board, but we always have brought it forward to a vote of the board, even when we were rolling the status quo calendar.
So we're talking about the new calendar starting, the school year start at 8/23.
That is correct.
Versus starting at 15. August 15th.
As opposed to August 6th. It would have been 16, but it's
Yeah,
going to be 23.
Week later.
Yeah, a week later. So the whole calendar moves down a week.
What happens with the break for the semester?
The semester breaks at the 18th of January, which is right before Martin Luther King Day. And so then the report card marking day is the day after Martin Luther King Day.
And then the proposed calendar, was that before break?
It was before the holiday break, yes. Yeah. So because we're rolling the existing calendar in its existing terms, we've rolled it based on the semesters being approximately equal but ending on a Friday. So we actually have 89 days in semester 1 and 91 days in semester 2.
And school will be out on the 12th of June.
That is correct, with the 13th being a teacher workday.
Thank you.
So I would recommend that if it's rolling over, that we actually put the one that's rolling over and do it at the next meeting, just so it's not confusing. If it's confusing to myself, then I'm sure it's going to be confusing to the public in terms of that. In terms of my framework, I think if we do that, I also think that we need to make sure we have discussions and a recommendation maybe for a 2-year or even 3-year. I was going to vote no on the proposed just because I had mentioned last time that I think, not that I'm against it, it's just that giving parents enough time that you at least give them a whole year in advance to map it out and plan out their schedule. So I think if there's a way for us to do, since this is 2018-19, have discussions now until August for 2019-20 and 2021, so we can move forward. Otherwise, if it comes again with this level of notice, I won't be able to support it because we're not giving parents enough time to map out their schedules.
Can you clarify to us the precise language in the contract in regards to who holds the ultimate authority in approving or authorizing the calendar? Is that something that the staff has to vote on, the NTA has to vote on and approve upon, or is that something that the board can vote upon and approve upon? What is the exact language?
So if it's an automatic part of the contract, we shouldn't have to
Yeah,
vote.
the collective bargaining association needs to vote on the new contract when there's a change. And at this time, they did not have a majority to approve the proposed new contract, proposed new calendar, hence reverting back to the old calendar, which Mr. Richards
Do we need to vote on it
mentioned. As Mr. Richards mentioned, I don't think you have to. It will roll automatically for March 1st, but as a matter of course, it wouldn't be bad form.
So there is still time, it could be,
No, at this time, we're going to revert back to the old calendar.
To March 1st. This would be our last meeting before March 1st.
This will be our last meeting before March 1st. That's correct.
I think it's been historical that we have voted on it after the NTA votes on it.
Well, so I would harken back to last year's discussion and vote, right? And last year, the union ratified a particular calendar that had the semester end at winter break or Christmas break. And the board took action and voted on it, and we stopped because there wasn't enough notice given. And so this is a 180-degree turn from what the staff already voted on last year. And I don't think we were supposed to have re-engaged in the process of voting for this calendar again. I think it was just proper notification. And so we essentially delayed it for last year's vote because it was too short notice. We've had a whole year now, so I would have expected that last year's calendar structure would have been carried forward this entire year, would have given the public and the parents notice that this calendar was coming because that was already voted upon. To then keep status quo and essentially filibustering any kind of progress that we would want to make with this, I don't think that's reasonable.
So we will endeavor to move to the calendar that the district wanted last year, that we hoped. The calendar committee agreed on that same calendar this year, but the members did not. And so we will move in a timely fashion for next year to ensure that we can come to a satisfactory ending. But it's going to be one more year.
And I think we're looking at a multiple 2 or 3 year, whatever it might be.
We would prefer 3 year.
Yeah. So that it becomes predictable for the families in the community.
Can we get a calendar or a timeline for an agreement between you and NTA when you will negotiate and bring this forward for discussion with the public, and so we can give families plenty of notice?
I believe this fall we can convene the calendar committee and have it approved and agreed before the holiday break.
So we can't do it now, we can't continue like now and then have the discussion now? Is that part of the collective bargaining agreement? I don't see why we couldn't have discussions like continue having until whether it's this or whatever on an agreed on calendar. Just for me again, because then in the fall that school's going to start, and then will be December, and then will be January, February, and then it'll be March 1st, and we're going to be at the same situation. And
But last year, the staff who voted on the revised calendar approved that calendar, and that was sent to the board to vote. And we were set to vote on it. We backed down because of public outcry that people were not given enough notice. But from my understanding, the staff at the time voted and approved that calendar. And I thought that this year was the year of essentially notification to our families that this calendar was moving forward. Not that there would be a revote, because that would be unfair to the cohort of staff members who voted last year to adopt this new calendar. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's essentially, I think we've committed an authorized revote of something that was already voted on that just needed some time to notify our stakeholders. Again, and we didn't spend this whole year to do any of that, and now we're up at the wall again, forced with this again of inadequate notification.
So Ms. Condon for CSEA would like to share some comments, please.
Good evening, everyone. It's not that the committee did not accept the contract, the calendar. We actually had a calendar for the next 3 years planned with the proposed calendar based on what last year was. Because we have a negotiating unions, it still has to go back to the members to be voted on. This year, the teachers decided not to accept the calendar as is. So regardless of the fact that you held off for a year because they didn't propose, there isn't anything we could have done when the members say they're not moving forward. So unfortunately, at this point, we have to revert back to this calendar. I do think we could bring the negotiating team, the calendar committee back to see, it's not the committee though, it's our members that are saying no. It's your teachers who are saying, no, we don't want to move forward for whatever their reasons are. Maybe if we can get through some of this other negotiating with the budgets settled, maybe they'll be a little bit more willing to move forward and make a successful move. I think we can notify parents now and say our goal is to start earlier so that they know. But quite frankly, I think until your members, until our employees say this is where we go, that's the way it's going to be. So you're right. It's frustrating as a committee to say this is what we're working on, this is what we accept, bring it to our members, and it goes backwards. But there's not much we can do at this point.
I appreciate the comment, thank you. What I'm concerned about is we have in essence nullified last year's vote with...
Which means this year we need to bring the committee back and say, what do we want to do with this? We accepted it and said, let's move forward. We brought it to the membership turned it down. So yes, we nullified it because of notification to the parents. Had it been accepted, it would have gone through and been notified with the parents. I think maybe, I don't know, Dr. Wong, maybe we should do another committee maybe next month or right after we figure out what's going on with the budget and see if we can get the teachers on board, or CSEA needs to be on board too. It hasn't even gone to CSEA yet. So it doesn't go to CSEA until the teachers clear theirs.
So if I can request the exact language in the CBA, please.
Here's the language in the CBA.
Thank you.
The calendar shall be implemented in 3-year cycles and mutually negotiated in the second year of each cycle, subject to the following provisions. If an agreement cannot be reached by any calendar committee during the 3-year cycle, the district and the association agree that this shall terminate the current 3-year adoption cycle with the understanding that there will remain 1 more year under the previous calendar agreement. Either the district or the association may at any time and for any reason withdraw from adopting 3-year calendar cycles by notifying the other party no later than 3 p.m. on the Friday before winter break of the year in which the calendar committee is to be convened. All negotiated calendar agreements are submitted to ratification by the NTA Representative Council and the NUSD Board of Education. If ratification is not achieved, the parties agree to meet and negotiate as soon as is practicable. Calendars for each pending cycle shall be negotiated with the understanding that such negotiation shall be concluded by March 1st of the 3rd year in the cycle. If negotiations are not completed by March 1st, then the calendar for the current year shall be adopted for the pending year. So when we did not adopt the 3-year cycle at last year's board meeting, it rolled the calendar for 1 year and forced a new calendar committee cycle for the current year. We took the 3-year and it did not pass through the NTA council portion. It did not get ratified. So because we are now out of time for March the 1st, the current calendar has to roll for 1 year, and we have to start this process again because it's a 1-year process when we don't have an agreement.
Thank you. Can you go back to the line that states ratification of NTA? Is that general membership, or is that? I thought I heard just the executive.
It reads, all negotiated calendar agreements are submitted to ratification by the NTA Representative Council and the NUSD Board of Education.
So not the entire board, not the entire rank and file NTA, right?
Right, but the numbers we have are 54% against, 46% for.
On the council, just the representative council.
That's the numbers that were given to me by the president of NTA. Those were the numbers.
That's all membership, though. They're asking.
Because it's not all membership according to the CBA. It's just the council.
Then and the president's not here tonight of NTA, so.
Right.
I was going to say, on CSEA, I'm just trying to help you clarify the ratification process for the unions.
Sure.
So the best bet is to have this discussion with the NTA president next month. But whether you accept this calendar or not to roll and vote on it, March 1st it will become effective.
Okay, but it's pretty clear that it did not require and maybe should not have required a vote of the entire membership of NTA.
Not according to what Mr. Richards read.
So I can contact the president of NTA and I can bring this back at our next board meeting.
What Mr. Richards read is
We're on the
Council,
old calendar.
NTA council, not what Mr. Richards read is NTA council.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
But either way, I won't be able to bring it back until the next board meeting, but in the meantime, we are still in the old calendar until.
But if they agree that that's the case, we could have a special meeting, couldn't we?
We could have a special meeting.
Before March 1.
Yeah, so I will.
Technically.
Yeah, talk to the NTA president.
And I would still, just based off of the timeline, I personally, we may still have the 3 to go forward, but.
You still have the notice issue.
You may not have enough.
As a past member of Representative Council of the union, if you ask your union members for their information or for their opinion and you get it, then you as a council vote to support what the membership want. So whether they ask all the members or not is irrelevant if the membership council voted it down, which is what they say.
They'll
vote it down now.
They voted it down. So I don't see any point.
It might be moved.
I don't see any point in doing that. I think that we are
Just
stuck with.
Point of clarification, 6.7 of the collective bargaining agreement, 6.7C, all negotiated calendar agreements are submitted to ratification by NTA unit members and the NUSD Board of Education. The calendar ratification shall be separate from and not linked to any other ratifications. According to this, the members, and the numbers that I was given was 54 against, 46% for.
Okay. Yeah.
So it may be a moot point, but I can still bring it back to the board in March. For clarification and just an update.
Well, it won't do any good because it will roll over in March anyhow.
It will.
They're not going to vote for it
But if
now.
there was a change of
But we need to still need to have the discussion now because this is what happens. I feel like every year, then we wait until the end, and then all of a sudden, oh well, we should have done it earlier. So if there's a way for us to continue the conversation in the spring,
And what Dr. Wong just read into the record, I believe is actually a change that they made, because when I pulled up the contract, I was actually pulling up the 2016 contract, and I believe he's at the 2019 contract, so I may have been reading out of the wrong year. So it is now the membership and not the council.
Thank you.
That clarifies it.
Okay, well, the question is, do we vote on the rolled over calendar, or do we just say it's rolled over?
I move that we vote.
Well, then
I would like to move that we accept the
Is there-
calendar, a rollover calendar.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, there's no vote because there's no point in voting. I mean, what happens if we take a vote and it's 4-0 to no? I mean, it's still going to roll over, right?
There's no action required on
There's
this.
no action required. It's going to happen.
But we said we always
It's up
had
to you.
voted on it, so if we're voting on something, it's going to happen anyhow.
It's fait accompli. It's already going to happen. There's no point in voting.
Well, next year when the new calendar comes, we have to ratify it. So we will vote next time,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
It's planned.
Maybe not unanimously, but hopefully, yes.
But there is now a motion on the floor.
Yes, there's no second.
Can we
though.
withdraw it?
There's no second.
Is there a second? Okay, well, Okay, next, we move to item 12.2. And I believe there is one member of the public that would like to address this, Mr. Knoop.
Good evening. Potentially significant growth, that's what's in the RFQ for the architectural firms. Okay. I'm a little bit concerned of the new construction in there. Asking an architectural firm if it's a good idea to do new construction. Is that like asking the Pope if he's Catholic? I really think it's very important that we have a process in place where the citizens of Newark, parents, get a vote, get a voice on this process. I am very concerned that this is going to be a decision-making by proxy, where the architectural firm is going to say, build, we need to build a new school. And I'm also worried that the board is going to be behind the curve on everything. It's like, oh no, we don't decide, we decide in the next meeting after we have the public. And then in the next meeting, oh no, this is temporary, this is a temporary vote. And by the time the text is there, there's no more time. You know, this is essential. We have too much real estate in Newark Unified. So should we build a new school? Well, maybe. You know, can we house potentially the students who come in Area 3 in the Banca Milani area? Maybe, maybe not. We need to research that. But we need to get that information out. We can't simply say, oh yeah, we should build a school because that's cool, lots of glass and marble. You know, the Newark City will love it, you know, curb appeal, all these things. But really, what's really important is it good for our kids? And do the citizens of Newark want it? If you're going to spend money, you can use a lot of that money to fix the existing schools. So, you know, please make sure that you involve the public with this and that it doesn't become like a decision-making by proxy because you said the experts, the gentleman and the gentlelady from the architectural firm say we need to build, and that's really a wonderful idea. And again, the interest of the district and the kids come first, not city politics and things like that, right? So I think you need to make some good decisions to make sure that you stay ahead of the game as a board instead of being behind the curve and be dragged into a process where at the end you find out you had no influence whatsoever. It's just driven by other forces, like in the budget cuts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. New. Superintendent?
Thank you. We're going to move on with our presentations tonight, but before we start, I do want to refer the board. You should have 2 rubrics in front of you, one for each of the presenters tonight. I will collect those at the end to try to get some indication as to which of the firms you think is probably a better fit. And I would say that in the RFP, it is very clear about process, and this is largely what we're going to hear tonight about from the firms, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start with, who's going first here? I got to look at the agenda.
SVA first. And then
SVA?
Yeah.
So SVA representatives, you step forward and introduce yourselves, and we'll get started. Let you have a minute to set up your PowerPoint or whatever you need to do. Want to take a quick 3-minute bio break?
Sure.
We'll
let you spend about 3 minutes so we can take a quick break.
Thank you.
Do we need to extend?
I'm sure we will.
Which one here, Frankie?
Hmm?
We're waiting for Mr. Priscilla. We're waiting for one more member. You didn't know this would be part of the first test that we give you guys. So.
I think we got our presentation down to about 45 minutes, if that's okay.
At your own peril, proceed.
We'll be within the 10-minute time.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I would entertain a motion to extend the meeting.
What do we have left? We've got 2 presentations, and then we have our reports. The consent.
30 minutes. And the consent.
Reports.
Yep. 30 minutes?
10:30, I think, should be more than enough time.
So are you making a motion?
I'll make the
I'll
motion.
second.
Okay, Ms. Crocker moved and Mr. Nguyen seconded to extend the meeting till 10:30. Please vote. Four ayes. Thank you.
We are SBA architects, and let me just begin by saying thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present today. We really are excited about the prospect of working with you, your district, and your stakeholders on the facility master plan, the energy master plan, and the deferred maintenance plan. It's certainly a great opportunity for us to work with you to look forward to the future of your district, and we value that greatly. My name is Chris Bradley. I'm a senior associate partner at SBA Architects. This is Nathan Herrero, also a senior associate partner, and Velma, one of our just rock star job captains. And so we are part of a larger SBA team that I'll be working with you. These are the faces that you would be seeing quite a few times over the course of this project. And then we also have additional staff members, some 40-odd architects back in the office to provide additional horsepower. Part of what we bring to the table is a lot of experience in K-12 education. We've all dedicated our careers to K-12 work, and it's what we live and breathe. We bring experienced architects. We have an interiors director, and also does all of our furniture and fixtures, programmer and project coordinator, 2 K-12 educational liaisons that help us with support and educational planning, designer, and a number of other consultants as well. We have KPFF as our structural engineer, BKF as our civil engineer, Camisa and WIP, our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, ANLA for landscape, Building Science Studio for energy, Sierra West for cost estimating, and then Jorgensen FM as our deferred maintenance partner in doing the assessment and facilities master plan. So we really bring a large team that has lots of experience doing this that can really provide a comprehensive master plan. Our firm is based around California public education. We have decades and decades of experience doing this. We're working with a lot of your neighbors. Here's just a handful of the groups that we're working with. Fremont, just down the street, Oakland Unified, Alum Rock, Ravenswood, San Ramon, etc. So we're certainly working with a lot of your neighbors and know a lot about the local needs as well. In-house resources, we really are able to provide a vast expanse of services, architecture, planning, interior sustainability, and then that consultant team that I just mentioned a moment ago.
Thank you. So when it comes to doing a facilities master plan, I think we really take a lot of pride in having refined the process of going through the facilities master plan with the clients and kind of defining the steps that are needed to be successful in sort of incorporating input from everyone into the process and really coming up with a solution that the entire stakeholder group can get behind. And that really starts with sort of building a consensus and sort of opening up the floor to dialogue from everyone who's involved. This means teachers, this means students all the way down to the elementary school level. This means neighbors and community members, even if they're not directly involved in the school, often have a lot of good sort of historical knowledge, input on the impacts on the rest of the community that the schools bring. And so really to open up and have a lot of dialogue with everyone. So sometimes this takes the place of kind of vision boards and having everyone write down priority items. A lot of times if there are schools where there are kind of changes moving program around, we'll actually do gaming sessions, bring boards in, get community members and teachers working on how to adjust the pieces, how their sites can be reworked to be more efficient, to be improved. So to really be interactive and sort of build everyone's momentum behind the project. The next step is really kind of a thorough technical assessment of all the campuses. At this point we have kind of the priorities, we've gotten a sense of the community at each of the school sites, and we're really looking to get technical information, and this is all the way down to looking at individual classrooms, looking at the infrastructure on the sites, the mechanical, electrical systems, evaluating your energy uses at the sites can be a big portion with the energy master plan included, and having the sort of experienced facility side to look at and help lay out those facilities needs for deferred maintenance, and whether that's equipment, whether that's general upkeep of painting and roofing, so that those items don't become sort of lingering big bond level items later, but can sort of be dealt with on an ongoing manner. So this is site walks, meetings, surveys sent out. There's a lot of ways to get that information. And then next is to synthesize that, to come together with the program to evaluate whether each of your existing sites, are there adjustments that can be made, can we move things around, can programs be shifted, to really sort of apply your existing building stock. We want to make as much use of the spaces you already have, because that's going to be the most cost effective for the school district, and to really sort of align that and start to look at the schedule for those programs and how that work could be phased out. And then to develop those into conceptual master plans. And we really like to have multiple options. You'll see at the bottom there are several examples, but we really don't find it useful to come out to, if there are different ideas, to kind of get things out in front of everybody, synthesize input, and lots of times the final results will not be anything that anyone in our office first came up with on a page, but sort of the synthesized results of working through with the stakeholders on an amalgam of the different options. And then through that, we can then take the process and extend it out through the rest of the design process into construction and implementation. And I'm just going to kind of go into some examples.
Sure. So just to add on to that, I think one of the things we really bring to the table to the district on this project is a lot of that experience, and really through that experience doing a lot of consensus building. I think probably one of our salient qualities really is that consensus building, having worked with stakeholders on just about every project that we work with, whether it's a facilities master plan like yours or even just a small restroom remodel. It's important to get that stakeholder buy-in. And we have experience across these many projects we've done over several decades building consensus. And so we've built these processes in large part as consensus building opportunities. And we can certainly get into more detail about some of those methods that we've used over the years if you'd like. I'll leave time at the end for some questions like that. This is one of the examples of a facility master plan that became a series of projects. One in particular we want to talk about tonight, the Bright Culinary Arts Academy. This is a project out for Washington Unified School District in West Sacramento. We did their facilities master plan. They called it a capital investment program, but it really still had those three pieces that you have. There's the facilities master plan, the energy master plan, and then a deferred maintenance plan. They just called it by that name. We went through each of the sites at the district. We opened every single door. We popped ceiling tiles. All our engineers were out there, and we thoroughly investigated the sites, thoroughly looked at the existing drawings, and put together this comprehensive investment program for them, from which then one of the projects became this Bright Culinary Arts Laboratory. Here's an example of some of the information that was in our capital investment program, so you can get a sense of the level of detail and the information that was provided. At the upper right-hand corner is some of the costs associated with the investigations and doing that assessment. And then master planning of the site, how to best use their existing infrastructure and what needed to be improved, either through changes or, in some cases, new construction. At the Bright project, we recommended, and the district ultimately approved, a scheme to use an existing elementary campus that they had closed down. There was a need at the district to provide some additional career technical education programs. And one of the ideas we came up with was taking that closed elementary school and turning it into a career technical education campus that the high school students would then use for part of their curriculum. And the first phase was turning half of the campus into this culinary arts program. It's one of the largest culinary art programs in K through 12 right now. We redesigned these portions of the campus to provide supporting classrooms on the bottom, a large culinary arts wing in the center in the purple. They can get 60 students going simultaneously in there doing various cooking opportunities. The multi-purpose room was turned into a commercial kitchen and really a teaching laboratory where the kids can basically host a restaurant style program. They could do dinner theater and that sort of thing, and it was a very successful project for us. Here's an example of the before and after, the after being the color.
So real quickly, and I think if there were any questions, we can get into some more of those examples, but I know you mentioned it earlier already, but a big part of the master plan I think we see is evaluating your new and any new spaces as well as your existing spaces for 21st century teaching methods, whether that involves a lot more collaboration between students and peer learning examples and sort of a more open, adaptable environment than the traditional sort of lecture classroom environment. There's really great ways to take advantage of indoor and outdoor spaces. And then as these projects go forward, we are really sort of fully familiar with the DSA process. It's how we spend a lot of days. So we're really comfortable working with them and getting these projects through to construction.
We view sustainability and energy efficiency as an integral part of our design process. We have an extensive portfolio of CHIPS projects all the way up to LEED Platinum and Zero Net Energy projects. Our goal is to work with building science solutions to analyze the energy needs of the campus and come up with a comprehensive, energy efficient master plan for the district.
So why SBA Architects? This is a list of things that we think really separate us. California K-12 experience, again, decades of experience. We've been doing master planning, modernization, expansions, and new construction. Really design excellence. We've won a number of awards, but really I think probably the best award that we get are repeat client work. Your neighbor Fremont, we're now working on our 16th and 17th campuses over there. And that's just a demonstration of our commitment to the district and their faith in us, giving us repeated clients. Our repeated projects. Great track record with DSA, incredible technical capabilities, on time and on budget project delivery, and really a great reputation in the industry. You have our 100% commitment to your district and to your goals.
Any questions?
Ms. Carter?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. If we can summarize what it is you do, you talk to the stakeholders, you find out what the information is, you design whatever, or set up the facilities, look at what we have, and then you go ahead and suggest things to improve it or to, for example, the science classroom would be one that might be plugged into there. Then at that point, you watch and you monitor the construction, or is that the end of what you do?
So there's two large pieces to this program, as I understand it. There's the facility master plan, and that's collecting all the data. Mm-hmm. That's doing interviews with the stakeholders, making sure we understand what the issues are, studying the documents, studying the buildings themselves, going out to each of the sites, and then from that, having a list of, that's basically an assessment of all the campuses, knowing where the existing issues are, mm-hmm. and then on top of that, beginning to recommend approaches to basically improving the campuses based on that information. And so that facilities master plan and then the energy master plan and the deferred maintenance plan all come out of that information. And then you have a list of approaches on how you can move forward to address these things. And then those would ostensibly turn into projects that we could also be involved with, in which case we would be designing that specific project, taking it through DSA, and then being an integral part of the construction administration process.
Okay, so what is the fee based? I mean, what do you base what we pay you on? What?
So for the facilities master plan components, we gave you a lump sum, and then we proposed a fee schedule based on project size for the actual projects themselves, should you decide to choose us to move forward with those.
Can you give me a rule of thumb percentage that usually, in terms of what we're doing? I don't have, what is the amount that we had down? I'm seeing that amount.
It's in the attachment.
In the attachment, okay.
That's on page 30.
I got it right in front of me. Page 30?
Yes.
I don't have it in front of me.
So there's a amount in the proposal that's for the facilities master plan scope, and that fee is written around specifically sort of the RFP and the tasks that are involved with it, the three main portions. So that that amount was assigned specifically based on sort of the size of the district, the number of campuses to evaluate, and the different activities that everyone on the team would be doing. The sort of fees, I think we gave a fee schedule for later work, but I don't think that's part of the contract or proposal at this time, and that would sort of be a separate individual discussion later. I think, should we move forward from the facilities master plan?
So I see 270,000, is that correct?
Yes, that's for the
master plan?
Master plan.
That's the planning process?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. We have recently done a demographic study, and we do have a lot of capacity. What kind of information do you need from us in order to make good recommendations about the overall usage of our facilities? Whether we should build something new, whether we should close a facility down, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think we would review those in sort of total evaluation with the condition of the existing facilities, and sort of where they're distributed. I know that we've talked before about future development, but it's unclear. I don't know if that's making up for the current capacity, but we would sort of take that into account to say, here are your projections that the demographer gave us for your enrollment and how that applies to each of your facilities, and taking into account how that distributes across the grade levels, because there can be some different issues in a district that is one high school district with a lot of elementaries feeding into it. So it may not be uniformly across the board at all the schools that the enrollment is declining or rising, but you sort of have to be looked at each campus. But that's part of the process we would do, is to take all that demographics information into account during the master planning.
Mr. Preciado? Mr. Wynn? Okay, thank you very much.
Next up, we have DCA. We'll give you guys a minute to transition. So would you review, just for the audience and for the board, the scope of the RSP? Was it really specific to, not beyond this initial step? Would be helpful.
Correct. So with regard to the request for proposals, and the question was raised by Ms. Crocker during the Q&A with the first firm. This RFP is specifically for the facility master plan, for the energy master plan, and for the deferred maintenance plan. The three items that we've been discussing for some time with the board. Along with it, we have the option as part of the add-on to it. If we have projects, we then want to move forward into the design as a result of, after we've reviewed all of that within the contract, we have the ability to add on to do projects based on what we find in there. And as part of that, we asked them to quote the fee process for what that would be like. So it's not binding us to do any specific projects after we receive the plans. The RFP is for the plan itself, but the contract was written when we worked with our legal counsel in such a way that if we then wish to move forward, we don't have to go back through a whole RFP process again and bring in perhaps another firm. We can move forward based on the plan that we have if we choose to do so.
Ready?
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, members of the administration, and members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Juan Barroso. I'm managing partner of Derivi Castellanos Architects. So we put together a brief, high-level presentation on our process for the master plan, the energy master plan, and the maintenance plan as well. It's about 10 minutes. Feel free to stop me with any questions along the way. And I'm glad to see everybody's wide awake. So we're starting right at 10 p.m., so here goes. I wanted to start by really just making a statement of why we're here. You know, my team really thought through this opportunity long and hard. We're very interested in working with you. We're excited about the opportunity for working with you on behalf of the Newark community. We want to help you build amazing schools that are relevant to the students, teachers, and the families of the Newark community. That's why we're here today. I'm going to introduce our team. Our project lead is Christina Frankel, who's a principal architect with our firm. She's also an educational planner for us. Adam Bayer, our director of engineering, has very strong expertise in energy master planning and maintenance planning. He's going to talk about that further in just a few minutes. Ramon Gomez, another one of our principals, will be supporting our efforts when it comes time to look at potential designs. Lisa Kaplan is our funding advisor, and she's going to collaborate with our team so that along the way we're looking at funding opportunities from the state of California, also looking at opportunities related to your real estate, and other opportunities in Sacramento with the many agencies that she's involved in, so she's a great asset to our team. Over on the right, you'll see Mr. Steve Castellanos, who was formerly the state architect. If you've heard of DSA, he was the head of DSA for about 6 years in the 2000s, and he also works with us to make sure that we maintain those good relationships on your behalf, not only with DSA, but agencies like the Department of Education, the Office of Public School Construction, which are important when it comes time to looking at approvals and funding opportunities. Wanted to touch on a little bit about our firm. We've been around a long time, going on 38 years this year. We have offices in San Jose and Stockton. We focus on public K-12 education and work in Northern California. We've had some great growth over the last 3 years. Currently, we have 25 employees, all who live within about an hour here. So you'd have a really strong local team. I noticed on your website that the superintendent sent out a letter to the community dated February 5th in English and Spanish, which got me thinking. And I wanted to point out that of our 25 staff, 10 of us are very comfortable and fluent in Spanish, and sometimes that's a great asset when we're dealing with the community. I'd like to point out a testimonial from one of our longtime clients, Mr. Jose Manzo down at Oak Grove School District in San Jose. We've been working with them for a long time very successfully. Now here's a list of projects that we worked on over the last 3 years, all in K-12 education. You're going to see small projects on here, from toilet upgrades to whole new campuses. Some of these projects are currently in planning, some in design, construction, and some are complete. We bring the experience from all these projects for districts similar to yours and the best practices that we've learned to your effort. I'm going to highlight just a couple of recent projects that we've completed so you can see the sorts of things we're working on. This is a annex high school campus for Pittsburgh Unified. This campus is about 30 classrooms. Most of them are science labs. It's on about a 0.8 acre site in Pittsburgh, so real tight. This project was built, the construction phase was right under 11 months, so pretty amazing. The courtyard is equipped with a lot of wireless access points, so it's become a really energized campus annex to the high school. This project is for Seaside High School. Seaside is in the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, which is on the forefront of 21st century education. This is a cluster of 6 double-sized classrooms, and this is what they call co-teaching classrooms, where it's 2 classrooms in a very large space with 2 teachers. So they're really on the forefront. These classrooms are designed to be naturally lit to limit energy consumption. They have excellent indoor air quality, excellent acoustics, a really great learning environment. This is a new K-5 elementary school that we're currently designing for the Roseville City School District. The concept here, again, a 21st century concept, is indoor-outdoor learning. So all of the learning communities have been clustered so that the classrooms create a central courtyard, which can be easily supervised from inside the classroom by the teachers. So the placement of windows and so forth, very important to create the sight lines. And again, a lot of wireless access points so that the outdoors is also a learning environment. If you know, Roseville's pretty hot up there, so we had to add some shade structures as well to keep the kids cool. But another nice 21st century example of our work.
Good evening, Board. As Juan introduced, my name is Christina Frankel, and I wanted to review with you the facility master plan process. That's the reason why you asked us here. It can be a confusing process to people, so I wanted to kind of review DCA's process on how we would move forward. So it really starts with the due diligence and understanding what your existing conditions are. It's understanding what your priorities are as well. It's talking to key stakeholders about key issues, but basically it's being prepared before we start the process. The second is community engagement. That's a huge part of the master plan process. Even though the box is the same size, I would say that that's the key component to the master plan process, and I'll discuss a little bit more later. But basically, it's about engaging stakeholders, and that's in multiple groups. That could be a steering committee that you meet and come back to often. It could be the board in having regular updates. It could be your school communities. It could be the teachers and students and parents that are focused either on the elementary or the high school level. But it's all about communication. First and foremost, we listen and we hear what everyone has to say. And then inevitably, there will be some discussions related to the new proposed school. That starts with the demographics. It's encouraging to hear that through Vanner and that you've already had some of this work done. So we would bring that in and inform the process. And we would listen to what your educational program needs are. Is that new school going to be, a K through 12 or K through 8, sorry? Is that going to be a magnet school? Is that going to be an IB program? Is that going to be a specialized program? Basically, we want to hear what it is that you want to do, but it's also an opportunity, not only for the school site, but also district-wide to be transformative. To look at not only what you want to do with, possibly in that school, but what you want to do with all your schools, especially related to the declining enrollment.
Good evening. My name is Adam Baer. Long night. Really appreciate that. So I would be heading up the energy master planning and the deferred maintenance planning. For energy master planning, it sounds like there's quite a bit of data that you already have, which I would characterize more on the benchmarking. And the whole concept of benchmarking is to understand your utilization in each individual building, and then on a campus-wide, for the purposes of setting standards, for the purposes of identifying targets, and for the purposes of establishing budgets. When you measure what, know what you have, then that's, the primary way to save money is basically to identify where all your energy is being used. An integral part of that is design standards. So it's design standards for when you do new construction, but also when you do renovation. And establishing sustainability benchmarks is also a very important component of that. And that's all kind of under the energy master planning part. And then demand side management, which is basically conservation. As far as deferred maintenance planning, the approach would be to really have a strategic view of it by taking a lot of the information that I'm thinking that you already have relative to the building inventory. Some of the information that was on Facilitron is already collected, all the square foot data. Sounds like there's utilization data that's already established. So it would be looking at that. And then developing a facility condition index, which is a relative number that basically is from, you can have it from any number that you make it easy to evaluate. But if you take a scale from 1 to 10, then it helps you to identify which facilities are you're better placed in terms of your investments to not put a lot of money into it. So a facility that has a very, you'll establish like a cutoff. So if you say a facility that has a 6 and below, the amount of money that you have to invest in it to be able to bring it up to a specific standard is really greater than you would want to do in terms of a long-term investment relative to starting either looking somewhere else or building a new school. And then just really kind of focusing on the resources that you have, data that you've already collected, and establishing that as part of the deferred maintenance and energy master planning.
So to complete the master plan process, we would review with you the funding opportunities. There's no one-size-fits-all, and it really depends upon what it is that you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. There's obviously state funding available, but there's also things like hardship funding. There's the possibility of geo bonds. There's also alternative funding like CTE funding. But the idea is that we would work with you based on your project list and propose a course of action for the future. And that basically is kind of an overview of the facility master plan process. But I did want to touch on the community engagement. That's a key component. That's basically where you get all of your input, and it really starts with listening. Everything that we do starts with listening. It's listening to you as a cabinet, the district staff, all the way down to members of the community, and teachers and students and staff. And that is an understanding of what the problem is. There's no right answer for taking one-size-fits-all from district to district. And we do a process called interactive visioning. We use manipulatives. So it's very hard for people that are non-architects to explain to us what they want to do. So we give the plan the opportunity to show them by putting things out and having them come back and show us what it is that they want to do. And then the validation and the transparency that goes to some of the things that you had talked about earlier in your board meeting about progress monitoring. Heard a lot about wanting to have regular feedback from the board about what it is that's going on in every process and having regular updates. And so that transparency is something that we would strive to do on a regular basis. And based on your strategic imperatives, it seems that it would be 6, 12, 18 months. So where the previous slide was based on graphics, this is based on the mission statement and the results. So when you have a sincere engagement, you basically build trust with your community because they've heard that they've been listened to. And that builds and strengthens long-term partnerships. The idea is that you create amazing and relevant designs that basically everyone buys into because they were involved in the process. So DC is committed to you. We're very good listeners, starting from the very beginning. We are flexible. We understand that this is not going to be a process where we're going to go down a very straight road, and so we have the capability of adjusting. We're creative, we're architects, so that's easy for us to do, but we also understand that for you to be nimble in the future for 21st century learning, that you have to create flexible environments so that your students and your staff can adjust to the growing marketplace of education. We're transparent. We understand that you are a public board and that you have to be accountable. So it's easy to be transparent and be accountable at the same time. But the point is that in creating the circle is that by creating and going through this process that we create relevance and that we want to deliver an amazing solutions for you. And that all stems from having a sincere community engagement process. So thank you. I recognize that this is very late, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. I know you have a lot of things on your plate, so I do thank you for the opportunity to allow DCA to present our qualifications to you. So did you have any questions?
Well, we certainly appreciate you for hanging in there at this late hour. Thank you.
So I do have a question, a request for actually both firms. Are you able to provide us with a sample or an example of master planning projects that you've completed in other districts or other areas so that we can, not necessarily what you are planning to do, but the actual product, the end result, right? Whether it's the presentation and or the book, the write-up, et cetera, so that we can further review that?
Okay.
Questions?
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So I'm a little confused with this, not necessarily confused, but as far as timing-wise. And I know for this item, we were asked to rank, the two firms. Is this typical of how we select?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's
not typical, and it's partly is because there was such an interest in the board of putting out, or I think part of what we, agree in the direction from the board was making sure that we had a clean and authentic process for community engagement. As I met with both firms, I shared with them one of our desired outcomes of going through this process was actually to reestablish trust in the community and to really let people know that we are listening, and that and that's kind of also why we have no firm commitment beyond this first process to go forward with any of them going forward if we don't have to. It's not a requirement. But no, I think that part of it is we wanted to make sure the board had input and fingerprints on whatever the final selection was. We had a staff go through interviews, and these two were the finalists that made it to the final stage. But, it's certainly open to whatever the board wants to do. I think that the intent behind it is just to get a feel for what resonates with the board more. You guys represent this community, and you guys hear questions at Safeway at night or when you're shopping, and I think that I wanted to make sure that you had a little bit more input than typical. Typical process would be I'd make a recommendation, it'd be one, you'd either vote yes or no. So I did change the process with that intent behind it.
I think the community, I think what I believe that would be helpful for them is the request I made in regards to getting those samples so that the community knows what we're going to, what firm we're going to hire or vote on, right? They need to know what is the end product that's being produced. What are we paying $270 and then for this firm $288,000 for? What is the end goal? What is the end purpose? And I think some of the board members will want to know the same thing. What is it that we're getting, right, from it? So I don't know if without reading those samples, before reading that samples, if we're ready to rank tonight those two firms,
Well, certainly we can get those samples from the firms, I imagine, pretty quickly and have that to you to look at before the next board meeting. I think our intent was to bring whichever you think was, if you can let me know who I'm bringing back for the next board meeting, that would be helpful. But I think both of these firms are qualified, but right now it's a matter of fit. So as you look at those samples and you look at those additional information, what's the better fit for what you need? And what you need as a community. So I think that's kind of what I would be looking for if I was interviewing two principal finalists. Same kind of ideas. Yeah, they're both qualified to do the work, but which is a better fit for what we need, knowing what you guys know about our community and the history we've come out of and the vision we're trying to set for the future. So I think that's easy to ask for that additional stuff, and you guys can hang on to the ranking sheets until we provide that to you. But I'd like to at least make a decision put something on the board agenda by March 6th, and that's easy to do. But I think that's a simple request that we can honor.
Ms. Crocker?
That was my comment. I agree with Member Nguyen that seeing an example of what it is we're paying for would be very good.
Sure.
And so, because we're looking at a limited amount of money, we want to make sure that we are not redoing what we've done in the past.
Right.
And I think that's a really important piece too. So I would like to suggest then that you do so, and so there's no vote that's necessary right now then.
No.
We can treat this as a first
So just
reading, so to
information.
speak.
Thank
right?
you. Yeah.
And then we can ask further details, because selecting a firm doesn't necessarily have to be a public process, does it? I mean, I know approving the contract does, but can you help clarify
We
that?
actually, I've actually done this process once before in another district, where we had, in our case, it was 3 very qualified firms, and as an administration, we wanted to get the board and the public's input. So we did a very similar process to what we have here, and we had 3 firms present. And the board went through a ranking process similar to the rubric that Mr. Sanchez gave to all of you. But if you don't have enough information, we will collect those from them. We will submit those all, and we can table this item to the next board meeting and then bring it back forward for further discussion based on that. But deliberation of the board on this item, because it is not eligible to be a closed session item, because it's deliberation surrounding entering into a professional services contract, it does have to happen in open session, not closed session.
Okay, but there are elements of this project that can be done in closed session in regards to the superintendent's evaluation, correct?
I don't know if that's what we want to do. I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that. I think.
No, not that we would deliberate this, but, and as far as there are elements of the evaluation that speaks to, master planning and
So here's my thoughts in terms of next steps would be to get the different outcomes or the end
samples. Okay.
Exactly, samples for the next, and have that discussion and not even necessarily make a decision at that point, especially from my perspective, because this is in line with the strategic plan, but I feel like we need to map out that piece of like, okay, here's our strategic plan, here's the 3 imperatives, here's how the facilities master plan falls within that framework before we embark in this or make a decision. That's just my thoughts, but.
Okay. And are we in a position at all? And like I said, this process is new to me, and you have more experience with this than I do, obviously. But it says in the statements here there were 5 firms that submitted proposals, and through the interview process, selection process, these 2 out of the 3 that came. Are we able to review at least just the costs of the others to see where they fall versus where these 2 fall?
I would advise to stick with staff recommendations at this point. I think we did have a rigorous process. We certainly could share those with you. I don't know if those had costs in them in the initial interview, did they? I don't think it's easy to share with you. That's fine.
I read them all or skimmed them all, but I feel comfortable with the 2 that you've brought forward. We only have 7 minutes. Can we move on to the next consent agenda? Oh, employee organizations. Okay, thank you. Consent agenda personnel items 14.1. A motion,
Move
please.
acceptance.
Ms. Crocker
second.
moves. Ms. Nguyen, Mr. Nguyen seconds. Please vote. Four ayes. Consent agenda 15.1 through 15, actually 15.2 through 15.5.
I move.
Mr. Preciado moves.
I'll second.
Ms. Crocker seconds. Wait, sorry. Please vote. Ms. Crocker?
I thought I had voted.
Okay. Four ayes. Thank you. Next, we have 5 minutes. We move on to Board of Education reports, announcements, etc. Mr. Nguyen?
I shall pass for the sake of time.
Ms. Crocker?
I'll pass.
Mr. Preciado?
I just want to say I appreciate the pieces in terms of the calendar and trying to map out the plan. So for me, like having more of kind of the meat on the bones, like, and as of the previous discussion we just had with facilities master plan, that this kind of falls in line. I want to make sure we don't put the cart before the horse, or from my perspective, like that it aligns. We're on the same page, or at least 3 of us are, in terms of the strategic plan, hopefully 5, but and then moving forward in that way. So I'm glad that we're doing that. So hopefully by next meeting we'll have a little bit more concrete substance on that.
Yeah, and you know, I feel that this can go in tandem with the staff bringing us the strategic planning elements of the 3 imperatives that we talked about and how this fits in with it. So I feel comfortable moving forward in tandem so we don't have to wait too long to make this decision. Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have one question though. Excuse me. So in the previous process that you did with the 3 firms in your previous district, were there just open deliberation as far as and debate? How did that work?
There was deliberation amongst the board after the conclusion of all of the presentations, and then the board ranked 1, 2, 3. We collected all of the boards, similar to when you and Mr. Preciado were appointed. A very similar process. Right. They ranked 1, 2, 3. We read the rankings into the record. The one that had the highest, the lowest score, that got the most ones, was the one we negotiated with first, and that was who we ended up getting a contract with, and that's who we went forward with.
So then, just so I can mentally prepare for the next time that we have to actually deliberate, everything's on the table, right? As far as, you know, everything that was in the proposal and the presentation. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, repeat your question. I didn't understand the question.
There was some extra.
You mean as far as what their proposals are?
Right.
The proposals were attached to tonight's agenda. We'll attach them again at the next board meeting.
I saw that. I guess I'm just kind of laying the boundaries for when we deliberate and discuss if there's anything that's off limits for us to debate or not debate, or is it just an open? I mean, because usually, and Superintendent brought up the example of hiring a staff member, right? You have deliberations and back and forth, in a private setting and not necessarily an open setting. You would never deliberate the virtues of 2 candidates in public if you're hiring a principal, right?
It seems to me that the ranking that we were asked to do gives input to staff. They have 2 firms that they've brought forward, and they'll bring their recommendation. We won't choose. They will bring their recommendation to us, and we say...
No, they're asking us, they want input.
And we approve or not approve.
So let me just give you an example, right? So what happens tomorrow if I go across the freeway and I talk to Fremont Unified and I say, hey, how is so-and-so firm doing for you? Let me see some of their work. Is that in bounds or out of bounds? And is that up for debate?
That's out of bounds because you're in the weeds doing staff work. That would be out of bounds, right?
Okay.
So
if you want me to call Fremont, I will. If you want me to call any of the ones I can. Yeah. But I think that per the bylaws, that would be out of bounds.
Okay. But can I go online and research their firm's history and whatnot? Is that in bounds or out of bounds?
That should be, it's all public information, so that's...
Yeah.
Okay. Alex, I just need to know the parameters of the debate, that's all.
But kind of to your core of your question, it's also, what was in the RFP? What do we ask them to do? And do we need, who do we think is best qualified to implement those things? I think that, all of that's on the table. All of that's on the table as far as what's in the RFP. And I think that it sounds like you need a little more information before you're ready for that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And we can get that.
And a community member gave us a very nice sample of a complete master plan. I don't know if it included deferred maintenance or anything, but I can get copies of that to also bring.
Well, no, I'd like to get a copy of their master plans that they've completed.
I know that, but I mean, I know what, I read that one and I loved it, so it kind of gives me a benchmark against which to look at the samples they bring forward.
And that influenced RFP. So we looked at sample master plans before we generated the RFP.
We have 1 minute to get superintendent comments.
Superintendent, you have 1 minute.
One comment is that Sierra went on to state in wrestling competition.
Yes,
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, great.
She spoke today at Rotary.
Yeah.
Did she?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, she did. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Did she mention that?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, she told us all about it.
So she
yeah.
was wondering with